have a small row at the top for a couple of cameras or shots. I have titles, I have videos down here, and then I have some other things as well, audio buttons, sound effects, and I have little lights to let me know if I'm streaming and recording, and also the activators. So this is not set up for activators yet. I'll have to reset all of this to get that set up. So what I want to do is go into settings up the top corner here, and then go to shortcuts. Then I can click add to create a new shortcut. Then what I want to do is go to find. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to press this top button here. And what I like to do is I like to hold it down. So when I push it, I know it's going to be fired off, and not when I lift it. So as you can see, there's different velocities here. So I like to hold it down. All right, so now I've got that one on like so. I can just set a function for it. So what I want to do for that button is set a cut transition to my main shot. Then I can give it a title down the bottom if I want to. We don't usually do that, but you can create a title so you know which one's which. And down the bottom, I like to say this is a local shortcut. Obviously, we use this computer in our studios for a lot of different things, so sometimes it's nice to have everything local so it's all specific, not changing global shortcuts and that sort of thing. So I just like to keep this local to this particular August 1 preset. And then I'm going to click OK down the bottom. So now, simple as that, I've got a shortcut ready to go for my camera. Just going to switch to the main camera, as you can see. So I have a lot of different shortcuts that I need to set up, from switching to images, video files, turning on and off audio, and that sort of thing. So if I come across anything exciting, I'll let you know, but I'm going to go through and program all of these different things. Now you can also clone them as well. So if I hit clone here, it makes it a few clicks shorter. When I edit it, I can then press the different button, and then I can go and I don't have to worry about the function because it's the same. And then I can switch it to this call picture in picture. So that's something that you can do to make it a little bit easier if you want to clone it, and then just make a couple of changes to it. So I'm going to go through all of these shortcuts and set up my X keys right now. Now for things like titles, you want to use the overlay section obviously instead of like the transitions or anything else. So I'm going to put my title in overlay. Position 1, listing title. And same for Martin, I'm going to put his one in overlay, input 1 as well when he needs to use it. Like so. So there's my titles done. And then on my video files, I just need to go and do the same thing as I did before with the cameras. Where's my outro video going? There it is. Okay, so now I'm up to my audio, so I'm going to hold down my Tim mic button, and then for the audio, what I'm going to do is toggle it. So I'm going to have audio on, off when I press that button. Then I'm going to go down to Tim mic, and I'm going to set that up. Now, one of the things that I could have mentioned is that we had assigned shortcuts to input numbers, so if things move around, it's always assigned to whatever number that was. I don't like doing it that way. That's just me personally, but it's up to you whether you want to assign shortcuts based on input numbers as opposed to the actual input itself. So that's that. And what I want to do is also add one for Martin as well. So I'm going to clone this. I'm going to edit it. And then what I'm going to do is hold down mic for Martin's, and then I need to actually select his call audio, so Martin call, as opposed to microphone because he doesn't have one. So I think that's about it for that production. So just as a quick rundown, we've got cuts to the main shot, picture-in-picture, Martin's, is that right? The Martin's mailbag, Martin's call. So I need to change those around. So this one, Martin's call should be this one here, and then the mailbag should be this one here. All right, cool. So that's why you test, and test again. All right, so the next one we have title. Yep, so that's Martin's, that's my title there, and then we've got Martin's title, and I have Ocean Talk video, Facebook winners, Q&A, the outro. For some reason, it's an old video. The setup image, and what else do we need? Microphones on and off. Like so, as you can see, microphones are going on and off. So those are the shortcuts that we've got set up. And one last one that I need to do is something I forgot. Social titles. Programming button. Social. So it's going to overlay this in. Ooh, what are we using? Martin's mailbag. Is it? Okay. So let's switch back to the camera. Actually, switch to Martin's mailbag, which is this one here, correct? And then social title. So that's all sorted. That's all of my shortcuts. Hopefully, all working. That's the plan. They're all working as they should be. So let's turn this off. That's done. So that's all my shortcuts, I believe. So. Fingers crossed. So now I'm going to go through and set up activators. So activators are the little lights that you can have on X keys and MIDI and all that kind of stuff. So all these little keys have lights under them. So we can set these off based on what's happening. So first of all you need to do is set this. This is a 124 T-bar, so I know how it all works. So note 0 to 127 I believe has to be set default, and we want the type to be off. So we want all the lights to be off when it's in its default state. So let's just say this is a local preset. There we go. All the lights are off. No more lights. Thanks for coming. Now I need to assign the activators to an actual event. So when I press this button up the top here on my camera, I want the little light to go on above it. So what I'm going to do is go add. I'm going to find it. Now because I'm actually pressing the button below it, I need to make a slight adjustment to the note because it's actually the 0. So it's the one above it, as opposed to the one below it, because I want the light to be on above it. It makes it a little bit easier. I think they're called like pipe blockers or something, or light pipe blockers. Someone from X Keys, if you're watching this, if you're still watching this, feel free to chime in and leave us a lovely comment letting us know exactly what it's called. So I want to set up an event. So I want to choose my input. So this is my main shot. I want to select the main shot so that when it's being used with the program output here, the little light is going to turn on. So if I'm X keys, I need to select X keys. I'm going to select this red one here because I've got the little light to set up. All right, so here's a quick demo. So hopefully you can see this. So you can see the little light there. My main shot is in the program output. And when I press this one, it's going to switch to Martin's mailbag and the light goes off, as you can see. On, off, on, off. All right, so that is basically how the activators work, and I can go through and set that up for a whole lot of different things. I'm not going to bore you with setting these up. I'm just going to go through and do that now. Now, as you can see here, I also have a row for numbers of videos. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 videos. So with these ones, because you can actually see through them, I don't know if you can actually see that there. You can see through the lights, and so you're able to set the activator to the actual key. So you can see it underneath it. It obviously works a lot better when you're not under bright lights like this, but you can see it a little bit. So I'm just going to set that activator up. So what I'm going to do is click add, find it, and I don't need to make adjustments to the note because it's under the actual key that I'm using. So the event will be the input, and it is the Ocean Talk video. So then I'm going to make this blue. Alright, so now that when that's video in there, I'm going to set this for the other ones as well. Should have worn my glasses. Wasn't a good idea to do this without my glasses. So now when I use this video, you can't see that. It's blue underneath it. And that one's blue underneath that one too. That's where you can set it up to the see-through light thing. So if you've got a MIDI device and the button you're pressing is also lighting up, that's what you need to do. Just press the button and you can assign an activator to it. I'm also going to set up it for my audio now as well. So if you've got an audio input that you want to have an activator for, you'll need to set it to audio input, like so. So then I'm going to select Tim Mic. Alright, so now you can see that my audio Martin's audio and my audio are both on Martin's call here, as you can see audio here. So when I press the shortcut, it turns it off, and a little light goes off underneath it as well. That's cool to let you know whether your mic's on as a really quick indicator. If you look down, you can see it. Now also I'm going to set up, you can see here I've got a little stream and record button here. I don't actually use those to start the streaming and the recording. I use them as activators to let me know that they're on. So I'm going to go into settings, activators again, and I'm going to add these buttons. These are the clear buttons so you can see through them, so I don't have to worry about changing the note. And then I'm just going to have recording on. So it's streaming. Keep to do this. Actually, let's make it flash. A red blinking for that one. Okay. So now when I'm recording, you can see that it's now flashing red. I haven't set up a shortcut for those, but I'm going to go that right now. So I've just about finished editing these videos and I've realised that I made a mistake on the activators. So in the activators here, what I've done is I haven't set these to not be assigned to an input number, so I'm going to turn that off, because if I move things around then the activators will change, so I want them to be activating with the actual input, not the input number. So these sort of things, these won't matter, but things like inputs and stuff that I move around, that's going to matter. So it's a little bit different to the shortcuts. It's flipped by default because most people use activators in a specific set. Again, I don't do it that way. I set up mine to be hooked up to the actual input. So that's why I've turned those off now. So now, even if I move things around...
Добрый вечер, уважаемые болельщики. Через несколько секунд начнется очередная встреча чемпионата высшей хоккейной лиги между командами хоккейного клуба Ростов и хоккейного клуба Сокол, город Красноярск. Игра началась, сбрасывание выиграли хоккеисты Сокола. Присматриваются хоккеисты двух команд друг к другу.
Outro video also should have some triggers on it, so transition in.
Меняются по ходу встречи игроки. Мищенко вбрасывает в зону. Отправляется шайба Краснов. Но выйти пока не может. Да, присматриваются хоккеисты друг к другу. Опасный момент. Владислав Туник бросает мимо ворот. Туник. Неточный пас Пеньковскому.
I'm going to have to do a full run through to work out whether I have done everything correctly. I need to go and work out
бросок.
Facebook competition.
Блокирует его.
Right. Till later. On the next episode of the VMix Funtime live show behind the scenes. Stuff this. You'll see me squinting through this whole video.
Ростова. Тропачев бросок. Увидел вратарь шайбу.
There it is. I'm recording this and trying to make a giant tutorial on how the VMix Funtime live show works, and it's the most boring thing anybody has ever made.
Очередная смена.
Previously on the VMix Funtime live show behind the scenes.
Да, выдох. вне игры показывает
What I
арбитр.
like to do is I like to hold it down. There it is. Should have worn my glasses.
Да, представляем
I'm
соперника.
back now. I've gone through 180 comments on our Facebook page. Why does Facebook make it so hard to read comments? I picked out a few wins for our
Шилиналет,
giveaway
номер
that's coming up.
74.
Now I'm going to set up that
Номер
full social
7,
stuff
Александров,
tomorrow morning. I'll probably
Александров
add a
Никита.
separate social
Номер
title
10,
for that
Князев
one and switch
Алексей.
it back to the one that we're going to
Номер
treat up
14,
for
Данилов
mail
Никита.
back.
Номер
And, let's go
18,
ahead and I'm
Цыганов
going to
Дмитрий.
start the show.
Павел
Hit the
Медведев,
magic button.
номер 19.
So that's going to go through
Так
the
вот,
show.
гости.
That's quite loud.
Первым шайбой успевает Давыдов.
All
Неточная
right,
передача,
so
шайба
g'day everybody,
остается
welcome to the
у
show. My
Аксенова.
name's Tim and I'm here to party. Are you here to party? That's the intro. First of all, I'm going to show you the setup image like we do every month.
Номер 24, Савельев Антон. Номер 26, Лебедев Егор. Номер 27, Долганов Илья. Номер 28, Главатский Антон. Номер 37, Чехов Сергей. Номер 40, Пучков Егор. Номер 47, Городков Владимир. Номер 49, Елисеев Тарас. Номер 52, Назаров Юрий. Номер 55, Белков Антон. Вилков Антон, извините. 70 номер Тютчев Данил. 71 Мищенко Григорий. 75 Шестаков Сергей. 88 Зайцев Дмитрий.
That's Martin's shot. And then I can switch back to mine if I want to. I can switch back
Орлов за
to
воротами.
here. Martin cool, me. Then next of all we have in video number 2.
Активно играть не дают ему.
Dance videos transfer back
Главатский
to
Антон.
me. Then I will go ahead and
Шайба,
show the
атака.
social titles and
На ворота ростовской команды.
results.
Перекрывает шайбу Андреев и сам входит в зону. Не получается бросок.
And this should transfer through to Martin's mailbag.
Да, сумбурно пока идет игра.
You'll see me
Передает
squinting through this
у
whole
той и другой
video and
команды.
just go, is this supposed to be wearing glasses?
Сергеев.
The answer to that is yes.
По Сополеву.
So, instead of squinting
На правый
back,
фланг. Помогает ему Щербаков.
So what I need to do is do that
Туник.
Q&A. Oh, I can see where it is now. So the Q&A needs to transition back to mailbag.
Неточная передача.
So now Q&A switches to mailbag.
Шайба возвращается в зону хоккейного клуба Ростов.
Go to the mailbag shot with Martin in it. There we go. So I think that's about it for the run through of everything. Everything should work. So I should now let Martin know what this number is.
Владислав Туник.
To this production.
Роман
Okay, so
Атарев.
that's my microphone sorted. And we just need to wait.
Теряют шайбу, не поняли друг друга с Щербаковым. И контратака красноярцев тоже заканчивается потерей шайбы.
Hello. Red leather, yellow
Бросок.
leather. The human torch.
Реагирует
will deny
вратарь.
a bank
Шайба
loan.
проходит мимо
Martin's
ворот.
probably listening, wondering what's going on. I'm recording this, Martin, for posterity's sake. And here I could probably go through and edit the results for this thing.
Бросок Медведева. На месте Кудаш. Стычка такая небольшая происходит вместе с Щербаковым.
Ready to go. Yep.
И Назаром
There it
Юрием.
is. That's
Такой
done.
вердикт.
Where are you, Martin? Hello. Where are you? Got my iPads. Mostly
Коммерческая
charged. Got a script in them.
пауза. Представляем состав хоккейного клуба Ростов.
I'm recording this.
Кудашев
I'm trying
Данил.
to make a giant tutorial on how the
Номер
Sunshine
31.
live show works, and it's the most
Масленников
boring
Никита сегодня
thing
запасной.
anybody has
90
ever
номер.
made.
Минаев
Everything
Алексей,
from scratch. I'm
второй
building
номер
this
защитник.
incredibly
Алексей
boring video,
Краснов.
so everything
Пятый номер.
started from scratch.
Давыдов
So the
Илья,
whole
шестой номер.
show might
Копачев
be
Виталий,
busted.
седьмой
Just
номер.
99% there.
Василий,
Like
девятый
they
номер.
always say, 99%.
Евгений Орлов,
is as good as
11.
100%.
Шадрин
Unless
Юрий.
you're brain searching. Chairs really
87.
creaking. Maybe from creaking
Oh,
the
извините.
audio. You don't need a script. You can work it out. It goes nothing.
17 номер. Щербаков Павел, 18.
So now we're
Антипов
going
Павел,
to do a
22.
run through and
Евгений
see
Петриков.
if this all works out or
26.
not.
Дмитрий
Fingers
Сергеев,
crossed
28.
that it does.
Артем Пеньковский, 33 номер.
So yeah, I guess we'll wait and see. So it is recording, so that's a good start. My microphone's turned on, so that's another good start.
В зоне
My
Ростова.
title has worked. Welcome to the
Проиграли
show. It's
сбрасывание.
going to be huge. The
Тимур
show is
Тимковский.
going to be amazing. Yeah, so this
Потерял
is the
шайбу.
setup image that we have for today. Put that back to myself.
Мы тоже
Talk
ничего не
about
смогли
nothing
сделать.
in
Какие
particular, and then I'm going to play this
Сокола,
video,
но
my
атака
favorite
продолжается.
video.
Евгений Шевчук, номер 44. Забавин Константин, номер 54. Сава Андреев, номер 66. Вадим Щегольков, Борис углу площадки, Пеньковский. Пеньковский за воротами. Не получилось ему отдать пас никому. Вот только сейчас нашел Микинина Василия. Спорный момент, но судья оставил это без внимания. Щегольков Вадим, номер 67, появился в составе сегодня после травмы. Прохоров Алексей, номер 71. Аксенов Аркадий, номер 74. Романов Полев, номер 87. И капитан команды Владислав Туник, номер 93. Главный тренер команды Пантелеев Григорий Владимирович. Главный тренер команды Сокол Красноярск Баев Денис Юрьевич. Исполняющий обязанности главного тренера Никишов Андрей Вячеславович.
Yes, is this a Ratatouille crossover episode?
Because I'm going to show the comments that people made, I'm going to have to put it on, add another social title and then link it to that one. And then after that segment's finished, then switch it back to the
Четвертое звено в составе Ростова сейчас находится.
Makes sense? Is that right?
Yeah. I'm going to research bodies of water tonight. 20-year-old tree crashing through our studio window. That's more than 30 words though, isn't it?
I don't think so.
Disqualified.
I think it's 29. Count them.
Сергеев.
1, 2, 3, 4. Well, is studio 3 words?
Exactly the question. You know? I put them all through word, so word is the determinator of what is considered a word.
Oh, it is 30 if you count studio as 3 separate words. It's still 30.
See? There was a lot where it was like, hey, these are really good, but they're like 60 words. No one stayed
Андреев
in the word. The only one
входит в зону, вставляет Давыдову бросок, блокирует бросок 71
Here's the
номер.
lesson for that. If you find a competition requires you to follow more than 2 rules to enter that competition, you have a really good chance if no one follows more than one instruction at a time.
There you go, folks. That's why you practice. He's beginning with that outro video. Shut up about the sun. Shut up about the sun. Thanks, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Проигрывает сбрасывание, покинутый в Ростов.
Yeah. That was our run through. Again, whenever you test stuff out, you run it through. Picked up on that one thing with the outro video, not restarting. So
Удачи увидел эту шайбу.
So yeah, that should be everything. We've gone through it a few times. So again, tomorrow morning I'll sort out social stuff, and we'll be able to go again, try and get some caffeine tomorrow morning, and then we'll start again. I've already explained to Martin that it may be a little bit rusty tomorrow with the show, but yeah. So yeah, till tomorrow. I need to do some kind of cool transition. On the next episode of the VMix Funtime live show behind the scenes.
Шевчук
Petrol prices out today. So hopefully Martin's awake and
выбрасывает
he's
шайбу.
on the VMix call, but we'll have to wait and see.
100% energy today.
Смог принять Владислав Туник и контратака Красноярского Сокола.
Everybody is fingers crossed. Inconsistently across the board, no jacket required.
Романов Полев подбирает шайбу. Далее ему к краю проходит. Щербаков подбирает. Туник.
You'll see me squinting through this whole video and just go,
Борются ребята.
yes, the Human Torch was denied a bank loan.
Ростова.
There it is. Shut up about the sun.
Не показывает судья. Удаление. Продолжается борьба. Сейчас только была потеря шайбы. Опасно играл Шевчук. На грани фола. Щербаков, извините.
although it doesn't always work to plan. That's Price is out today.
Сергеев.
Hopefully Martin's awake and he's on the Linux call,
Рапачев.
but we'll have to wait and see.
Now that I've had my caffeine, it's given me the ability to shrink
Сбивает
down to a
вратаря.
small format
Ну,
so I
судья,
can
видимо,
easily update our website. So what I need to do is go into
настроен
YouTube first,
сегодня
create our stream, and then go onto our website and update the
по-своему
embed code so that
делать свою работу.
everyone can watch. Alright, so I'm in my YouTube account, so I'm just going to go to create at the top here, go live.
Рапачев
I'm
не
just
дает
going to
шаг
schedule a stream.
покинуть зону.
I want to use the same settings as the previous month, so that's already all in there, ready to go. So just reuse the settings. And set the time here.
Дальков.
9:45. August.
Потерял контроль шайбы. И атака сразу хоккеистов Сокола.
I can change the thumbnail, which I should probably do.
Бросок.
Okay, so I've now changed that
Хороший
thumbnail.
бросок.
No, it's not for kids. Let's just go ahead and create it. So now we have our upcoming live stream here for today.
Савельев Антону, ну,
And if we click on it,
Данил все
we'll
увидел.
find out our information in
Ловушки.
regards to our stream key, so we
Поймал.
can copy that and paste that into the
Рассказываю,
mix. But that will be
если
the
вот
same
видел,
as what we had for
я,
last
говорит,
month. It's going to be
не
a
видел.
recurring stream key, so
Не
we
видел,
don't
не
need
слышал.
to change it. I can double check
Ну,
it,
как
but I
есть,
don't
так
need
есть.
to change it. So I'm going to leave this low latency, so that should be right to go now. So if I go back into my video section and go to live here, if I select this here, I can actually go in and grab the embed code and that sort of thing if I needed to. So if I right click on here, I can grab the video URL, or I can grab the embed code if I
Шайбу
need
потеряли
to
еще
do
раз
that.
из
So
зоны
I'll go on
выходим.
my website, which I'm going to do right now.
Забаян Константин
So here
контролирует
I am on our
шайбу.
website,
Перевод на Илюда Давыдова.
vmix.com/live. This is where we live
Илюда
stream
Давыдов
and embed
бросает
the
по
code for
воротам
live chat.
средней
Now,
зоны.
between months, we like to put
Надежде
the
на
last
добивание,
month
но
on there so people can watch it if they
все
want to
видит
check it out.
вратарь.
So what I've done is I've copied the embed code from the video file and I've dropped it into our website code. So I'm just going to reload it now. And as you can see, that will bring up the live stream and the live chat. Now, if you want to work out how to do this, you can check out our tutorial about how to embed live streams to YouTube, and you can see how you can embed the code
бросок.
on your site. So what I've got now is I'm just double checking the
Данил
recording
Кудашев.
settings are all right.
Шадрин
The recording
входит
is
в
good
зону,
to go.
вбрасывает,
Double check
идет
the
смена
stream
по
settings
ходу
as
игры.
well. And YouTube, yep, so that's the correct key for it. I'm going with 6 megabit to YouTube, 1080 using the hardware encoder. So that's all good to go as well. So that's about it. So I'm hopefully just waiting for
Да, это
them to
третья
show up.
встреча уже команд за последние 2 года. В прошлом году
Everything's
хоккеисты
done so
Ростова
far. I just need
встречались
to set up social as
только
well.
один раз с
So I'm just
хоккеистами
make sure.
Сокола.
One thing that I
У
forgot
них
to do
дома.
was
Бросок!
Martin's call.
Какой сейв! Да, молодец, Данил. Рекламная пауза.
Martin's audio is on. I'm going to trigger this on completion. I want to make sure that audio is audio on. Now I could set it to toggle, but I'm going to set it to audio on. And then when there's set it to Martin's audio. Martin call. And then so that's going to make sure that Martin's audio is on. As we did with the run through yesterday, kind of I forgot to press it, so I want to make sure that it's definitely going to work. So now let's trigger it on for Ocean Talk video. Let's just double check the audio for that. Let's double check to make sure the audio turns on. Make sure this turns on when it triggers. And there we go. So that's great. So now that's set up, I don't have to worry about turning on his audio, which is good news for me. Chair is like super squeaky. Oh well, what are you going to do? Battery in the mic, that's done. All the triggers and everything set up now. I've got to set up Linux Social. Now, it's going to be a bit tricky today with Linux Social because we have a couple of different things going on. Make sure this is in here. Now, first of all, I'm going to set it for internal Facebook and YouTube. Now, I have to go and find the winners for
Атакуют хоккеисты Ростова. Ополев. Рапачев бросил. Борется за воротами Владислав Туник. Щербаков. Сергеев не дает шайбе выйти из зоны. Хорошая передача. Не позволил бросок Сергеева. Все видел вратарь.
Queued up the ones from Facebook.
Да, команды встречались 2 раза уже до этой игры. В прошлом году Сокол принимал Ростов у себя дома. По ходу игры хоккейный Ростов выигрывал. За несколько минут Сокол сравнял, перевел встречу в овертайме. В овертайме удача улыбнулась Соколу. В этом году Сокол тоже принимал Ростов у себя дома в сентябре. Но Ростов был сильнее, 3-1. Это 3-я игра. Третья игра соперников должна выявить, кто лучше. Бросок Давыдова, хороший в дальнюю девятку. Ну, вратарь вытаскивает.
Something's bound to go wrong. When you try and make a video tutorial while you're preparing a live stream, things will probably go wrong. That's all I can say. I'm just hoping I've remembered everything. Usually I would be fully prepared by now. It's 9:49.
Очередная смена составов происходит в хоккейном клубе Ростов. На лед выходит первое звено. Орлов, Андреев, Антипов. Краснов, Шевчук в обороне. Андрей выигрывает сбрасывание. Краснову. Передача на Орлова, но Орлову не дали принять шайбу. Антипов подобрал, борется.
I've sent out a tweet, Facebook, all that kind of stuff, letting people know that it's on. I've set up social this morning, hopefully with all of the winners that we had for the giveaway.
Краснов не дает шайбу выйти из зоны, бросает, подставляет клюшку. Такие Сокола. Шайбу покидает пределы поля.
I've also set up that trigger for Martin's microphone to turn on when he switches to so that's about it. Teleprompter set up. And I think I'm going to start streaming, if that's alright with you. Should be fine, right? That's the spirit. So, if you're out there watching this, congratulations, you've made it. Let us know if the audio and everything's alright. 100% energy today, by the sounds of it. Everybody's amped. 100% energy. I'm going to hit the montage button and start streaming from now on. He's going to prepare himself, build up that energy to 110%. I've got my glasses here on standby.
Да, с такими бросками Шилин справляется.
Last minute text messages wishing me well for the show.
Довольно опытный вратарь.
All of our supporter out there texting me before the show. So that's much appreciated.
Владислав Туник входит, бросок. Очередной раз. Отбивает шайбу. Шилин. Не унимается Владислав Туник. Прошел по второму кругу. Бросок. Заблокированный бросок. Выбрасываемый в зоне Красноярского Сокола.
Hello everybody and welcome to the VMix Funtime live show for August 2020. Had an X-Keys 1242 bar, got a Surface for social, going into the production PC, and I'm streaming this all out at 1080.
Компенковский на сбрасывании.
To YouTube.
Выигрывает Давыдову.
Yes, this is our recurring segment. A long recurring segment, Ocean Talk, where we discuss everything to do with large bodies.
Передача
Yesterday we asked you
никуда,
about,
но идея хорошая.
Yesterday or the day before, we asked you what was your favorite
В надежде, что
ocean.
кто-то
Here are the
окажется
poll results. Billy Ocean.
на пятаке.
So yeah, number one was Billy Ocean. So,
is it accumulating time? Like I know these are short, but is it going to be like an accumulation of? We'll use 15 seconds, so you're in trouble. We're going to ban you, so all audio is now broken.
It's very
Лебедев бросок.
I give this song,
Притирку со штангой проходит шайба.
And the trick is, if you want to make it look even sharper, just to flex
Меняется
on how
хоккеист Ростова из Красноярского Сокола.
Studio camera blurrier than your VMix calling. People think that the whatever video calling technology you're using is incredible. So let's move on to segment number 2. Everyone's favorite segment.
Томилов жестко сыграл Андрееву, нанес травму. Но судья в очередной раз посмотрел в другую сторону. Бросок Краснова не точно. Петриков.
Pro license
Передача Орлову.
acquired. And some winners that we had for the
Антипов.
Facebook giveaway
Краснов.
competition. Did you have any words
Потерял шайбу.
for those people? No? Alright, so I think it's about time for the Q&A segment of the show. And I'm just going to readjust my settings.
Показывает судьи, что можно играть. Проброса нет. Шадрин. Антипов.
Social title, so I can flip it to the new one, and then I'll go through some of the comments after
Шадрин.
this short break.
Находит Аксенова, молодец. Но Аксенов чуть-чуть просмотрел шайбочку.
What is your favorite song from the Phil Collins album? The Phil Collins album? I think consistently across
Шадрин,
the board, No
Кропачев.
Jacket Required has better songs. Well, it has Susudia, which is my first introduction to Phil Collins. I like Take Me Home. I think it's a good closeout to the.
Не дают пройти в зону.
Great film, but
Шадрин.
maybe we won't have to talk about
Хоккеист там
Prores
Сокола.
for 15 minutes of the 30 minutes of our show. Can't get us answers. No, just thanks for watching. And,
Идет смена по ходу
we'll
игры.
see you next time, maybe.
Меняются и те составы.
With that outro video.
See you next time.
Давыдов.
Alright, so
Опять
my
Давыдов.
record's finished. Everything's done for the show, so
И снова Давыдов.
back on. Yeah, thanks for getting us cancelled.
Сейчас
Appreciate it.
показывает по спутнику.
On the next
Начинает
episode of
атаку
the Phoenix
хоккеиста
Funtime
Ростова.
live show behind the
Ополев.
scenes.
How are
Входит в
Opals
зону.
scan? Microtransactions.
По спутнику.
Microtransactions.
Решил защитника бросить. Заблокировать шайбу. Опять бросок. Хороший бросок. Прям мешал даже свой игрок. Подаренный вратарь. Попал в вратаря, будем говорить так.
Previously on the Phoenix Funtime live show behind the scenes. See what the prices are today. So hopefully Martin's awake.
100% energy today. Everybody's amped. Fingers crossed.
I think consistently across the board, No Jacket Required has better songs.
And we should be good to go to start the show. And that rhymes. So,
А
yeah. What do they call it? Longitude or latitude? Which one's which? I think it's still
это разное выбрасывание.
Star Wars
Пинковский
based,
выиграет. Краснов.
skin microtransactions. We got to get under that.
Фигальков
Start
сходу бросал,
microtransacting.
попал
How are Opals a scam?
И
Not only are you playing copyrighted music, you're bringing down the Opal.
Красноярскому
Big
игроку.
Opal is going to be
Контратака.
up.
Данил Кудашев, конечно, это видел. В принципе, не составляло труда поймать эту шайбу.
Is that it? Is that your only rant regarding the free tour? Wasn't exactly a free tour. The no spin zone with Martin Spinclair.
2:59 остается до
certificates on the back of a napkin where
окончания
people were like,
первого
I am
периода.
a school. Martin wanted to be a YouTube sensation, so he created VMix. Martin's a cheapskate. Spending 20 grand on a video switcher is more important than helping people? You've changed, man, you've changed. People like circular stuff, man. I mean, he's talking about crop circles. Microtransaction crop circle. Microtransaction. This is a rant.
Отскакивает шайба, опасно очень.
PC super fast.
Хорошо
Awesome,
сыграл
cheap
Краснов.
PC.
Тут же контратака. Микинин. Передача не получилась на Пеньковского.
VMix 23.
Фигальков.
Now with microtransactions. I have to
Ряд
reroute
ошибок
this.
с той
I have to do
стороны.
this on a second computer. I have to do this.
Вне игры.
Do you have any emails?
Не
Don't
показывает
send them.
себя.
I only want emails regarding
Аккуратненько, ребята.
microtransactions. So if you've got
Столкнулись друг с другом,
microtransaction
Артем.
ideas, email us 24/7. Microtransactions. Apparently it's Zark Muckerberg.
Опасный прострел, никого не было на пятаке, заблокирован Артем Пеньковский был. Продолжает атаку. Защитник. Удаление зарабатывают хоккеисты Ростова. Своими активными действиями были вынуждены.
I think everything actually
Сокол допустили
worked out.
ошибку.
So like a start from
За
scratch,
подножку удаляется капитан команды
everything actually
Красноярского Сокола.
went off without a hitch.
Шаганов Дмитрий, номер 18.
Microtransactions. So that's about it for the VMix microtransaction funtime mean dream live stream. And so now I'm going to move this recorded file that I have on this computer over to the network, so upload it to YouTube, or am I just...
Большинство в Ростов. 20 место в лиге, 14% реализации. У Сокола 124 место в лиге, 78%.
Шабаков.
Краснов. Ложится под шайбу хоккеиста Красноярского Сокола. Борется. Краснов, шайбовый. Краснов еще бросок. Отлично играет вратарь. Отбивает шайбу. Битком. Не дает хоккеист Ростова выйти шайбу. Из зоны вот только сейчас выбрасывает. Меняются хоккеисты. Ростова остается. Выходит первое звено.
A quick vMix PSA, make sure that you recharge all of your devices at the end of each show, that way they're ready to go when you get ready to start your next production. So everyone knows that the best videos have the best thumbnails. I mean, why else would you watch a video? So I'm going to create a thumbnail here and make
Не получается пока.
First of all, we need to draw people's attention to this rat for some reason.
Третья пятерка, извините, выходила. Сейчас на льду. Щегольков, Микинин, Янковский, Сергеев, Кропачев. Вот удалось расставиться. Сергеев, Кропачев. Сергеев, Щегольков. Сергеев, пас. Кропачев, бросок. Отскок. Ломается клюшка хоккеиста Сокола. Сергеев. Кропачев. Янковский. Выше ворот. Шайба летит. Сергеев. Ожесточенная борьба на пятаке. Мигинин ведет. Ну а! Гол! С передачи Кропачева шайбу забрасывает Щегольков. За 16,4 секунды до конца периода хоккейный клуб Ростов реализовывает большинство.
That brings us to the end of the vMix Funtime live show, behind the scenes studio experience tour.
Получается, у Щеголькова забросит уже вторую шайбу команде Красноярского Сокола. Одну он забросил Красноярский.
Coming in and organizing this production, setting everything up, shortcuts, triggers, adding assets, video files,
красивая шайба.
all that kind of stuff.
Увидел.
Now typically we would do this from month to month, so we just kind of load up last month's presets, about 95% done, and then change a couple of assets. But I was able to start from the beginning this month, and everything actually went really well. Now we always test the afternoon beforehand, go full run through.
Итак, дорогие болельщики, отправляемся на перерыв.
So that was really good. So always remember to
Со счетом 1-0 ведет команда Ростов.
Now this is how I like to do things. People do productions very differently. I am not a pro at productions. This is just how I like to do it. I set it all up exactly how I want to do it, and that way I know it's going to work. So set up your productions how you like to do it. Create a familiar workflow that you can repeat week after week, and that way it's your production. You'll know exactly how it runs, and so you can make it run smoothly every single time. Now remember, it's always great to be able to include some of your own personality in your productions, make things fun and exciting for you. That way you'll be able to enjoy it every time you do a live stream, and hopefully you can develop an audience that appreciates what you like to do and the things that you're interested in. So thanks for tuning in, and if you do have any questions about vMix or anything, drop us an email, and I'm going to go and listen to some tunes. Stream you later. Yep, there it is.
How are opals a scam? Microtransactions, 100% energy today. Microtransactions.
I like to hold it down.
Everybody is amped. Microtransactions,
Most boring thing anybody has ever made.
microtransactions,
Did you like the rat?
microtransactions,
Shut up about the sun.
microtransactions.
I'm going to research bodies of water tonight.
Welcome to the update to the Intro to Video Editing in Premiere Pro course. My name is Dave Bodie for Envato, and in this course, you get answers to some of the most frequently asked questions from the intro course. You will learn a bit more about exporting, dynamic linking between Premiere and After Effects, using the Essential Sound panel for dialogue, sound effects, music, and ambient sounds. You will learn how to get your audio from Premiere to Audition for editing, and then back into Premiere in a seamless way. You will learn about some of the new audio effects in Premiere Pro to make great mixes. You will also learn how to make basic titles and animated titles with essential graphics. Learn how to export your own motion graphics templates, and learn how to use third-party templates for titles and transitions from Envato elements. You will also learn how to use proxies for faster editing, learn how to create a multi-camera sequence from a single high-res camera shot, learn how to use the freeform view, use auto reframe, and learn how to work with captions. This is a big update to the original course, and there's a lot to learn. To get started, check out the first lesson on dynamic linking to After Effects. In this lesson, you will learn how to use Adobe's dynamic link to get your project or even parts of your project over to After Effects for additional graphics, animation, color correction, and grading, and more. So I have a real basic project here in Premiere. I just threw together a little montage using stock clips of some skateboarders. And right here I have a stack of 3 clips that I'd like to do kind of a 3-panel. I have these 3 skateboarders, each one is doing a trick, and I'd like to do kind of a 3-up or 3-panel shot of this. And for sure, this can be done in Premiere, but it would be a lot faster to do in After Effects. And there's some things that, well, you can't do in Premiere because you don't have the same kind of plugin set. So I'm going to show you how to use Dynamic Link to get these 3 clips over to After Effects and then have Premiere basically live update any changes that I make in After Effects. And this is super simple. You can just right-click on these 3 clips or even a single clip and then choose Replace with After Effects Composition. All right, so After Effects loaded right up here, and the first thing that it does is to ask us to save the project, which you definitely should, and you should also probably save the project in the same location as your Premiere project, maybe even in the same kind of folder structure. It doesn't have to live right next to your Premiere project. And I'm just going to replace this After Effects file right here, skaterae.aep, and I'll just replace that, no big deal. And After Effects will import those clips automatically, and it will put those clips inside a composition that's the same length as my original clip. If I go back to Premiere, you can see that now those 3 clips are gone, and what I have in its place is this dynamic linked media item right here. So over in After Effects, I'm going to do something just really quick. I'm going to create a new shape layer, and you don't have to follow along exactly. I'm going to delete that stroke. I'm going to change the shape of this, just divide that by 3. I'm going to hit enter and name this center matte. I'm going to duplicate this, name that right matte. I'll duplicate that, name that left matte, and I'll bring up the alignment window because it's not already up here. Oh, there it is. Dock that right over here. I'm going to take the left one and align it to the left side. I'll take the right one, align it to the right side. And I'm going to use these 3 layers as track mats. So I'm going to drag them down above my footage layers and then select all of my footage layers and set them to alpha matte. Now I'm going to take my matte layers and lock them so that I can't move them around. And then I'm just going to reposition my layers in the background so that they are centered up in each one of these frames. I'm not sure which one goes where. Okay, we got that guy over there. And then this skater over here. Really quick, really easy. I'll just save this, and if I jump back to Premiere, check that out. Pretty easy, right? If we go back to After Effects, I'll use Video Copilot's FX console, and I'll pull up the tritone effect, which is a stock After Effects effect. Maybe make this one orange. I'll just copy that effect, paste it down here. Maybe make this one kind of, I don't know, green maybe? That looks cool. And the center one, maybe make this purple. Pretty cool. Really simple, really fast to do. Now, depending on what you are doing in After Effects, you can see that this media item here, this clip, is showing up red on the timeline. That means that there are not cached frames, and it might not play back in real time. My system is pretty fast, so I have a pretty high level of confidence that this sort of thing will play back in real time without dropping any frames, but your mileage may vary, and you may be on maybe a mobile system or maybe a system that's a couple of years old, and so dynamic linking in After Effects will work, but you may find that the effects that you're using inside of After Effects are going to not play even close to real time. There's a way that you can kind of get around that pretty easily. You can just take your clip here and then choose Render and Replace. It's going to pull up a Render and Replace window, and it'll come up with some options here. I'm going to leave this on individual clips, format of QuickTime, although you have some other options there. And I'm just going to use Gopro Cineform, and that'll be fine. Underneath Destination, you can choose next to Original Media, or you can browse, and I'm going to store this in my Assets folder under a subfolder called AE Renders. You can put it wherever you'd like. It's also going to render 30 frames as handles before and after the clip, although I don't think that's going to work quite right because there's the way that the clips were trimmed. Doesn't matter though, because this is going to work fine. I'll hit OK, and this is going to basically render that out and replace it in the timeline. There you go. It's done. And now you can see that portion of the timeline has turned yellow. It'll basically play nice and smooth like any other clip because we have transcoded this into a nice intermediate codec. I did GoPro Cineform 10-bit, but you could also choose ProRes. Either one, it really makes no difference. If you're doing something that has some kind of alpha channel, you'll probably want to pick one of those codecs that is labeled as having an alpha channel. So, the only caveat here is that now, when you go over to After Effects, any changes that you might make, maybe we want this to be blue. Save that, we'll jump back here. These will not update anymore. However, once you've made changes, you can just replace this clip right here. So you can right click on this and choose Replace Clip With, and you want to make sure that you have your After Effects clip right here, the one that ends in AEP in the timeline. You want to make sure you have that selected. You can come up here to Replace Clip from Bin, and that will replace it with this After Effects media item right here. No big deal. So either way, you can just leave the After Effects media item in here or the dynamic link clip in here, or you can render and replace if things are going a little bit slow, but just know that once you've rendered and replaced, it's like you've rendered it from After Effects. So the updates or any more updates that you will make are not going to update. And you'll have to replace it and then re-render it to get those. Now, a couple other things that you want to keep in mind. You can also create a dynamically linked After Effects project without sending anything over to After Effects. If you just come up here to File and then go down to Adobe Dynamic Link, you can do a new After Effects composition. If you have a clip selected, this option right here that is currently grayed out will be available, which is what we did before. You can also import an After Effects composition from another project, which is pretty cool as well. Maybe you've already been working on some kind of motion graphic intro. You want to put it in your project and still have the option to be able to adjust it on the fly. That's an option for you. But let's say we want to create another After Effects composition, and we'll just leave these at the default settings, which match our timeline here, and it'll create another comp in After Effects. Now, the one kind of maybe unfortunate thing is that these comp names are not ideal. And if you're sending a lot of stuff over to After Effects to do, a whole bunch of different dynamically linked compositions, these comp names, if you rename them, so let me rename this Essential Graphics Linked Comp 07, which is just completely meaningless, to text thing, because I want to do some kind of text treatment to this. It's also probably a good idea to just maybe do a little bit of organization in After Effects, just like you would in Premiere, just to keep yourself sane. The problem with naming comps in After Effects, even if we save this, we jump back to Premiere, those names don't update at all. So you may want to just replace the first part of this media item right here with the same name as your composition so that you can just keep those things straight. So now if I just bring this item right out on the timeline here, of course it's not going to do anything because there's nothing in my After Effects comp. But if I jump back over to After Effects, we come over to the text thing comp, let's just throw some text in here. There we go, some text goes here. That is obviously my favorite font. I'll just center that up there. And if we jump back to Premiere, you can see that updates here. And that's a really simple thing. I wouldn't throw things over to After Effects just to put text in there because you can do that with the Essential Graphics panel a lot easier. But, you know, you could get in here and do all kinds of cool animation to this text. You can use all kinds of effects that are not available in Adobe Premiere. And you can have that live update over in Premiere. The cool thing about using text for this kind of dynamic linked workflow is if you have your clip selected here, you go over to the Effects Controls, and you jump over to the Master tab, check this out. Whoa. The text will update from Premiere, and this gives you a lot of flexibility. So you can design a really simple text thing, and this is really similar to how the Essential Graphics now works with the Mogert templates or motion graphic templates, where you can basically just update the text and the thing that was built in After Effects will update automatically. And this works even if you have multiple text layers. So I just duplicated that with Control D. More text, check this out. Right over in After Effects. Whoa. It updates, which is really, really cool. Now, of course, this is a really simple example, and you can use the same idea to use all the great things in After Effects. You know, maybe you wanted to do some more advanced color grading than you can do with the Lumetri color panel. Maybe you want to do some motion tracking and add some kind of cool, maybe 3D-ish type effects here. All that is available. You know, anything you can do in After Effects, you can do in this dynamically linked way. The cool thing is you don't even need After Effects to remain open for this to work. You can close After Effects, and you can see that this will play basically in the background because I'm pretty sure it's just running After Effects in the background. But you don't have to remember to open up After Effects because I just closed that down every time you open up your Premiere project. And anytime you want to go back and make a change, you can just right-click here and choose Edit Original, and it'll fire After Effects right back up, and you can get to work on making your updates. Well, that about wraps it up for this lesson. Make sure to check out the next lesson where you are going to learn how to export your projects using the successor to H.264, H.265, or High Efficiency Video Codec. In this lesson, you're going to learn how to export your projects using the successor to H.264, H.265. So, H.265, or High Efficiency Video Codec, is the successor to H.264. And although H.264 is still very much a web standard at the moment for things like YouTube, Vimeo, Facebook, etc., you're going to see H.265 slowly start to take over because H.265 is 25 to 50% more efficient. What that basically means is you can have the same size of a file and you're going to get better quality. Or you can have the same quality at a much smaller file size. Now, this is a big deal because online video is not slowing down in terms of its growth and its spread and its use for all kinds of different applications. And if you can get the same quality in a smaller package, you can bet that that standard is going to be adopted because storing big videos costs money. So thankfully, this is very easy to do using Media Encoder. So in the same way you export any other project from Premiere, you can either from the timeline right here have your sequence selected, or from the project panel have your sequence selected. And you can use the keyboard shortcut Control-M, or you can come up to the menu, you can choose Export media, same thing. But I would learn the keyboard shortcuts. Now, you're probably most used to selecting H.265 or maybe some other format, but check this out. We now have the option to use HEVC, High Efficiency Video Codec, or H.265, and you're going to see there are some different options. But by and large, you can probably get away with using some of these presets. So if your composition is HD, you can choose the HD preset, and you'll see you'll get a very standard sort of resolution, although you can change that if you like. There are some other options down here in terms of what level you want to encode at, and this is something that you're going to want to check if you are uploading to a specific platform. Now, right now, sites like YouTube and Vimeo will accept H.265, but they do not have recommended specifications for what level or what bit rate to use. My guess is that you can basically get away with using the same thing that you would for H.264, but you'll be uploading a higher quality because if you're exporting at the same bit rate, it's going to be grabbing more information for the most part. Now, if you haven't checked out some of the options in Adobe Media Encoder, and this is just the exporter, but these are all the settings that Adobe Media Encoder will use, there are a lot more options than there used to be in terms of the effects, because now we can apply LUTs, we can do standard dynamic range, conforming, we had image overlay, name overlay, timecode overlay. I believe those were in the previous versions when the original Intro to Video Editing in Premiere Pro was created. We also have things like a video limiter, a loudness normalization, and going through all of those would be its own mini course. And you can explore what all of those options do over on Adobe's site. They go into great detail. The one thing I do want to mention here that is new is this option right here for hardware encoding. Now, this is a big deal, and this is something that was added to the latest edition, at least at the time that I recorded this lesson. This just came out within the last, 2 weeks or so. Now, hardware encoding has been a part of the Adobe suite for a while, but its implementation was sketchy at best. It used to be that your options of software encoding or hardware encoding were the hardware encoder might be faster, but the quality wasn't as good if you were comparing it to the software encoder. With the latest update, the hardware encoder is every bit as good as the software encoder, and it is much, much faster. So this is a really cool option if you have the hardware for it. So again, you can probably stick with the presets here, and they go all the way up to 8K Ultra HD, which I'm guessing is probably not what you're producing videos at right now, but when and if you do, this codec has you covered, and it's going to look fantastic. And just like anything else, we'll select this back to HD 1080p. You want to just select the output name and output location. Click Save, and then click Q, and this is going to go right over to Adobe Media Encoder. There it is right there. If you need to make any other adjustments once it gets over here, you can click on this preset and it'll open up that export window again. You can change any settings that you need to, and you can just click the play button to start encoding. Now I'll pull up my task manager here so you can see exactly what the hardware encoder is going to do. So let's see here. If I sort by GPU, you should see that Media Encoder is going to utilize the GPU at least a little bit. Yeah, there it goes. Up to 20% to rip down this encode. Now, I have a ton of other stuff running in the background, but the last few projects that I have exported from Media Encoder with that hardware encoder option enabled have gone a lot faster. So there are some downsides to using H.265. One of those is that you need a much more powerful computer to be able to edit it. So this is not the codec that you want to use if you are sending your projects to someone else, either so that they can do some motion graphics, or color correction, or just to edit in a larger sequence. For that, you want to use an intermediate codec. And to find out more about that, make sure to check out the next lesson. In this lesson, you are going to learn how to export your projects to an intermediate codec like Prores, Cineform, or DNX. The first thing you may be asking yourself is, what is an intermediate codec? And that's a great question. So an intermediate codec is something you use in the post-production process. It's not something you use typically to deliver a final product to an end destination, any web platform. They're all going to be looking for something much smaller. What you would use an intermediate codec for is to send an edited version of your project over to someone else to either have it color corrected, to have motion graphics applied, or to be part maybe of a longer video. So the example that I'm showing here, this is a short section of a video that I shoot each week for my church, because at the time of recording this video, we in the United States, I live in the state of New York, are under lockdown from the COVID-19 global pandemic. And so any organization that does live events is rethinking how they're doing that. And so what we're doing is we're shooting everything during the week, editing all of it together, and then broadcasting it on Sunday morning. So my job is to shoot the sermon, which is like the main portion, the main speaking portion of our Sunday morning service. I shoot that, I edit it, and I deliver it to another editor, and then he combines that with the music, the announcements. He throws in the sermon, the message, and then any ending bits of the service. So I don't want to give the editor a highly compressed delivery codec, because he's going to take that whole edit and then compress it again. So intermediate codecs have less visual loss to them than your typical delivery codec. They have way more color information. They have way more bit depth, which is shades of gray in each one of the color channels. And there are three main codecs that you have to choose from that are sort of industry standard. One of them is Apple ProRes, another is Gopro's Cineform, and the third is Avid's DNX. So to export your projects to an intermediate codec is the same as exporting a delivery codec. We just need to change the format. So I just hit Control-M on the keyboard to bring up this export settings window here. And instead of H.264 or H.265, if you want to use Avid's DNX, and the only reason why you would use this is if you are sending it to someone who's using Avid. Otherwise, almost everyone else is going to ask for either ProRes or Cineform. In fact, I've never had anyone ask for anything else except ProRes. But Gopro Cineform is another great option. In fact, that's almost always what I use. So when I export these projects, I use the QuickTime format, and QuickTime is not a codec. You can kind of think of it like a bucket, and inside that bucket you can use many different codecs. So you can use QuickTime Animation Codec, Apple ProRes. You can actually use DNX codec inside of a QuickTime wrapper or with a .mov file extension. And you can see there are some other codecs that are not really popular anymore, Gopro Cineform. Almost all the stuff that I've ever done is either Gopro Cineform or ProRes. I've been using Gopro Cineform because before Adobe had whatever license deal they now have with Apple to get ProRes, which you can see right here, they had Cineform, and Cineform is just as good as ProRes. Most of the time, Gopro Cineform YUV 10-bit or Apple 422 will be fine for 98% of the projects you ever send to anyone else. But you want to check so that they're getting the type of file that they are expecting. If someone just says, send me a ProRes file, what they're looking for is Apple ProRes 422. This is the standard flavor of ProRes when someone says, send me a ProRes file. There's a high-quality version, which is very high bitrate. There's a light version, which is lower bitrate. There's a proxy version, which is even lower bitrate. And then there are two ultra high-quality versions. One is with an alpha channel, and the other one is not marked with an alpha channel, but this 4 is where the alpha channel goes, so I don't know what's up with that preset there. But if you're ever exporting graphics from After Effects and they have a transparent background, you're going to need a codec with an alpha channel or a flavor of a codec with an alpha channel. So you would want to pick either Apple ProRes 4444 with alpha, or maybe Gopro Cineform 12-bit with alpha. But like I said, Probably the two most common that you'll run into are Apple ProRes 422, which is what folks normally call just ProRes, or Gopro Cineform YUV 10-bit. And the process of exporting is like anything else. You just queue it right here to run. There are not a lot of options like there are with H.264 and H.265. For Cineform, you have a quality slider. The preset for YUV 10-bit is on 4, and it only goes up to 5. 5 is what they call, I think, Film Scan 2. 4 is Film Scan 1. Both 4 and 5 are nearly visually lossless. So they're both very, very high quality. If you use a preset for ProRes, you don't even get an option for the bandwidth because the bandwidth is in this ProRes preset. When you pick ProRes 422, the bandwidth is tied to whatever resolution your project is in. So if it's 4K, it's going to be huge. If it's 1080, it's going to be, well, less than 4K. But just to give you an idea, you can just queue it up in Media Encoder and it'll open right up. So it shows right up in Adobe Media Encoder, and you can get that started. Now, last thing I want to show you is, this is the output folder for a recent video that I did. This right here, this 6/7/2020 sermon, this is a 30-minute video, and it's almost 48 gigabytes. So we're talking a big, big file size difference compared to a delivery codec. A delivery codec might be a fifth of this size, maybe a tenth of this size. For a 30-minute H.264 video, I'm thinking maybe 4 gigs is what it might be if it were H.264. So major, major difference here. And if you're sending things through the internet, like I've been doing for the last few months, you need to make sure you have a pretty fast connection to be able to upload files that are this big. That about wraps it up for this lesson. Coming up in the next few lessons, you're going to learn about some new audio workflows, including the Essential Sound Panel. In this lesson, you're going to learn about the Essential Sound Panel and how you can use it to punch up and clean up your dialogue for better mixes. I have a really simple project open here, and before we jump into the Essential Sound Panel, which you can see over here, I just want to play a little bit of this project for you so that you can get an idea of where we're starting from in terms of the mix and where the dialogue is at. And in this lesson, we're going to be talking mostly about how to treat dialogue or kind of talking tracks, and then in the next lesson, you're going to be learning about how to use the Essential Sound Panel for treating your music, sound effects, and ambience. I'm going to go back to the beginning here.
Hi everyone, my name's Nate Ransom, and I wanted to tell you about a project that my brother-in-law Chris and I have been working on for the past several months. The project is a children's book that we've titled Ducks on a Boat. And we're looking for some input from the community and a little help getting over the finish line as far as publishing costs go. So one of the things we really think is exciting about this book and this project that we're doing is the characters that we've come up with. We've started with the idea of ducks.
All right, I think that's good enough. So you can hear there are a few issues that need to be addressed. And this is a simple project. I have all of my dialogue stuff here, which is just, it's really a monologue, but I call it kind of a talk track, right? This is where all the talking lives. It's just one person speaking throughout this. Then I have a music track. I have some sound effects of some ducks and some water kind of ambience down here. And that's pretty much it. It's all really simple. But you can tell that we have kind of a level problem with the dialogue. It starts off and it seems like it's about the right level or volume, if you will. And then it gets too quiet. And then the music comes up seemingly on its own. It's actually in the track that the track kind of builds and gets louder with its intensity. And then it sort of obscures the dialogue. And that's something that definitely needs to be addressed. And I'm going to do that with the Essential Sound Panel. Now, if you haven't brought this up before, you can come right up here to the menu, go to Window and Essential Sound, and that will pop up. There's also a dedicated audio workspace, which you can click if you have your workspace bar up here. And I'll just reset this to the saved layout. And that's something you can use as well. I actually don't really like the audio workspace. That doesn't really work for me. So I'm just going to go back to editing with the Essential Sound Panel open here. So the way that this works is in your timeline, in your sequence, you select the clips that are the dialogue, right? So I'm selecting all of these clips here, and I don't have to select all of the video portions because a few of them are unlinked from the video. It doesn't really matter. I'm only concerned with the audio here. I'm going to select all of those and then tag them by clicking this button as dialogue. And when I do, it's going to open up this very specific tool set here that is geared towards dealing with audio. I'm just going to collapse these. There's 4 main sections. We have loudness, repair, clarity, and creative. Each one of the sections actually has loudness, and I think it's probably the most useful out of all of them. Because a lot of times you're dealing with clips and they're recorded at various levels, or maybe the camera has some kind of auto gain thing. And leveling out your clips is an important part to making this sound great. So all I need to do is click this auto match button, and you can see in the timeline here what's going to happen. All of these now are loudness matched to have the same loudness. Now loudness is a much more advanced process of analyzing the sound over time, and it has much more to do with how we perceive loudness rather than what is the loudest sample in each one of these clips. Dealing with the loudest samples in each one of these clips is more of a peak normalization process, and that doesn't do nearly as good of a job as loudness matching, which the Essential Sound panel handles really well. So now with just that one operation, I'll play the first few seconds of this.
Hi everyone, my name's Nate Ransom, and I wanted to tell you about a project that my brother-in-law Chris and I have been working on for the past several months. The project is a children's book that we've titled Ducks on a Boat. And we're looking for some input from the community and a little help getting over the finish line as far as publishing costs go. So one of the things we really think is exciting about this book and this...
So already we're in a lot better spot than we were just a few minutes ago. It's not perfect, the music needs to be addressed, but we're going to look at that in the next lesson. So I should say at this point, if you ever deselect your clips like I just inadvertently did, you can get back to the selection you had with all of your dialogue clips by just clicking this button over here in the Essential Sound panel, and that'll select everything that you have tagged with dialogue. You can also clear the audio type right up here if you've selected something that you don't want to be grouped with all this other stuff. You can clear the audio tag, and that will get rid of that, and it'll reset everything. It'll pull all the effects off and the loudness matching. So I'm just going to undo that. Now we're reset to where we were before. I should also point out that you can work on individual clips here, and you can address those differently than how you are addressing all of the clips that you have tagged as dialogue. That becomes a little bit more complicated because there's no way to identify which specific clips have different settings applied. So in general, I prefer to just set them all the same and then come up with a different way to address individual clips that need more or different attention. So the next section down here is repair. If you want to do something really simple and really common, which is to denoise your dialogue tracks, maybe there was some ambient noise in the room, wind noise, could be the air handler in the room, or a loud refrigerator, or some kind of appliance, or maybe it's electronic noise, noise that the microphone itself produced, or maybe the recorder noise in the preamp. Almost everything that you record out in the field could use maybe a little bit of denoising. And there's the option to do that right here. And the default values for all of these is around 5. And when you apply this reduce noise and you play your clip, listen to what happens.
Project that we're doing is the characters that we've come up with. We've started with the idea of ducks, but introducing them into different scenarios where they can learn lessons. The first book that we're actually focusing on is this idea that the ducks have found a boat. And this is something new to them.
So what you're hearing is at the beginning of each clip, the denoising effect, which, by the way, I don't know if you noticed, but this little effects indicator here has turned green on all the clips, and that is because all of these clips, if you click on them and then go to the effects controls, they now have an audio effect applied to them. And so this denoise effect that is applied individually to each one of these clips is sort of analyzing the audio to try and figure out where the noise is and then doing some magic to basically get rid of it. And at the beginning of each clip, it sounds muffled as the denoising effect is sort of analyzing the audio. And so I had thought that this way to work was not really effective because you would have this thing that happened every time you played at the start of a clip.
I have a few young kids, and I've been really excited.
It sounds bad. What I found out is, after experimenting with this more, is that what you need to do is actually play this whole thing through, ideally your whole sequence through, at least twice. Because on the second playthrough, I guess the analyzation has been done, and it works a lot better.
Introducing them into different scenarios where they can learn lessons. The first book that we're actually focusing on is this idea that the ducks have found a boat. And this is something new to them, and they're very excited by it. But what happens when they actually become too...
So you hear that muffly spot right there? Listen to what happens when we play it a second time.
And they're very excited by it, but what happens
third time
to them, and they're very excited by it, but what happens when they actually become too dependent on the boat?
So it's not perfect, and it requires a few playthroughs of your entire sequence, which, to be honest, does not work with my workflow. But this is a pretty effective way to denoise your clips. I do think that the default value of 5 is probably a little aggressive, and you might want to experiment with moving it down to maybe the 2 to 3.5, maybe 4 region for things with kind of light noise in the background. If it has moderate to high noise, you are going to have to jack this up pretty high. But I think all of the default values are maybe just a hair too aggressive for these repair functions here. But again, your mileage may vary. It could be that the type of clips that you are working with, all the default values work fine. These tools right here for dealing with audio repair issues, and that could be reducing reverb, which is a really common thing, de-essing, which is addressing the harshness that you might get in certain microphones pointed in a certain way with certain people. Not every microphone has a real harsh sound, but sometimes you hear footage that just sounds really harsh with S's and sibilant sounds. And so the de-esser can jump in there and help. I'm not going to demo all of these. You can do that on your own. But just know that the default values on some of these are maybe a little bit aggressive. All right, let's jump down to the next section here. And actually, I'm just going to pull off the reduced noise for now. In fact, I actually need to reselect all my clips because I only had one clip selected. And so taking the reduced noise effect off that one clip now gives us this warning. And it tells us that some of the clips have some stuff enabled and others don't. Basically, not all the settings are the same. Now, again, like I mentioned before, if you're working on individual clips, you may need to do that. You may have one clip that needs more noise reduction. So you have to select that one individually and make an adjustment. Make an adjustment on that like that. But when you go and select all of your clips, it's going to say, hey, not all the clips have the same setting. So if you want them to, you're going to have to basically move this slider. And as soon as you move this slider, all of those effects update to have the exact same settings. It's definitely something that you should know about the Essential Sound panel. But for now, I'm going to take this off and we can disable the whole repair section completely. And with that, I think it's a good place to end for this lesson. Now, there are still a few more things to talk about as it relates to dialogue and the Essential Sound panel, but for that, you're going to have to check out the next lesson. In this lesson, we're going to pick up right where we left off in the last lesson, talking about the Essential Sound panel and learning how you can use it to help clean up and punch up your dialogue for great sounding mixes. The next section down is clarity, and there's some good things in here and there's some things that I don't think are super useful. The one thing that I like is this dynamics feature. I think this is pretty good, and it has an analyze button here, and it'll kind of analyze your clips. And basically what this is going to do is help you to get a more consistent level in all of your clips. And what this applies is a dynamics effect, which is essentially a compressor and an expander. And you don't really have to know exactly what that's doing, but the effect is that it turns up the louder stuff and it turns down the quieter stuff. And the quieter stuff is all of the stuff in the background. So background noise, maybe some weird mouth noises in a recorded dialogue track. It could be traffic noise in the background. All of the lower level audio stuff gets pushed down, and all of the upper level audio stuff in terms of the amplitude, which is usually where the talking sits, hopefully in your dialogue tracks, the part that you want to hear is well above the background stuff. And if that's the case, then this will just make that more so. It pushes the dialogue up above the rest of the audio. And so just applying this dynamics effect to these clips, check this out.
So one of the things I've realized in my life is that I actually really enjoy teaching. I have a few young kids, and I've been really excited by seeing them grow and how they learn.
It makes it a lot more consistent because things that are really loud get compressed a little bit, but overall, this is just a nice smoothing effect. And again, any values around right here in this kind of middle range are going to work. The next section down is EQ. And I'm kind of 50-50 split on this EQ setting here in the Essential Sound panel. I like the first kind of 6 presets that it has for background voice, intercom, locked in the trunk, old radio, on the telephone, outside the room. Yeah, that's 6. I think all of these, the EQ preset is actually pretty good. If I wanted to, for example, make this clip right here sound like it was on the telephone, check this out.
What I'd like to see is taking this general idea of ducks that are learning lesson.
I think that's pretty good, actually. However, the other options that it has here for podcast voice, subtle boost, that public radio sound, and vocal presence, I don't really like these as much because I think the curves are not in the right area, at least for me. And the microphones that I use and what I like to hear, I don't think they do a great job of doing a subtle male boost. It does boost something, but I don't think it does in a way that makes it sound nice. Take a listen.
And kind of expanding it over a number of different ideas. And these books, you're going to actually get to help us pick where we should focus. One of the areas I am particularly passionate about is different types of technology and the ways that these ducks could learn lessons about how it works and why. Some of the other areas we've discussed.
Now, all of those are not bad, they're just not that great. And there's better ways to EQ using the track mixer and a nicer parametric EQ effect. But you may find that one of these presets works great for you. Again, your mileage may vary. Finally, we have the Enhance Speech option down here.
Ways that these ducks could learn lessons about how it works and why. Some of the other areas we've discussed are actually things around freedoms or the way you would treat others and things like that. So now that you've heard about our project, how can you help?
It does enhance the voice, I'll give them that. I don't think it sounds quite as nice, but again, you're listening to something that was recorded in my studio with a really pretty nice microphone and some decent preamps. It does have a tiny bit of noise on there, but you may be dealing with audio that was recorded maybe with a lavalier mic under a shirt, and that is usually going to sound kind of muffly, and so you may need a little of this enhanced speech effect to be able to give that a little bit of punch, to be able to sit right in the mix. Again, all of these effects are not things that you will reach for all of the time, but it's good to know about them. And finally, we have the creative option down here at the bottom, and basically all this does is add some reverb to your dialogue.
Ways that these ducks could learn lessons about how it works and why.
Now, for the most part, all the presets here are very nice sounding. Its usefulness in every situation, I think, is pretty limited. This is much more of an effect. Maybe you're doing some kind of narrative piece and you need to match some close mic'd dialogue with another mic that has a lot more room sound. Well, there's a preset for that, large reflective room or maybe small dry room, and that may help you to very quickly kind of match what's going on. For talking head stuff like this, interviews, reverb is not what you want to add because it's only going to mask the messaging, basically. If you have to do some kind of pickup voiceover where you recorded an interview like this in a quite reverberant space and you needed to match that, that's when you may want to reach for this option here and put a tiny bit of reverb on that voiceover pickup. You know, maybe that pickup is over some B-roll so you can get away with it. Again, just like everything else, your mileage may vary. But that about wraps it up for this dialogue section. Because audio is so important, I wanted to give this lesson a little bit of space to be able to expand and explore and just give you a nice demo of what these tools can do to help clean up your audio. Well, that about does it for this lesson. Make sure to check out the next lesson, where you are going to learn how to use the Essential Sound panel to balance the music against dialogue, sound effects, ambience, and more.
Вот сейчас преимущество было видно с скамейки дальней.
In this lesson, you are going to learn how to use the Essential Sound panel to deal with sound effects and ambience. Alright, let's check out what we have in terms of sound effects. So I've selected my ducks quacking here. Nothing special with this clip. So again, we have a loudness auto match. And I'll zoom up on this duck quack clip. Could be a tongue twister. And let's just see what this is going to do. Alright, so this made it too loud.
We've titled Ducks on a Boat.
So, again, we can reset this and maybe give it another try here. But yeah, that's not going to work. But this would be good. Okay, stay with me here. That didn't work very well. But if you had multiple sound effect clips, right, and this is very common when you're dealing with sound effects, is that the level of those sound effects is not going to be equalized between them. You may have a big sounding explosion. You may have something quiet. Right, so this auto match here is nice because it's going to make a very level playing field with a bunch of different sound effects. Now, I just use it on one, but you could see how that could be very, very handy. And then you could bring the level down using track keyframes for volume to mix against the rest of the things in your project. Another option we have here is reverb. This is, again, something that'll work maybe a little bit better with high impact kind of sound effects.
And we're looking for some input from the community and a little help getting over the finish line as far as publishing costs go.
That sounds pretty good. The nice thing about reverb is that it has the effect of pushing things in the background. So you can select something like heavy reverb and maybe just dial it up a little bit more.
On a boat. And we're looking for some
quick way to add some reverb. I think it's pretty cool. I wouldn't use it in this particular instance, but you have that option. Finally, there's a pan option. This is kind of nice if you have a bunch of sound effect clips that you need to manage their position in terms of their stereo imaging, right or left. This is a quick way that you can do that, and you don't have to go into the effect controls. So you can just move this right or left, and it's pretty simple to do that. You'd be surprised at how much clearer you can make a mix by taking some sound effects and moving them around. I mean, if you had sound effects that were matching something happening on screen, you'd want to match those to, you know, if you had an explosion over here, you wouldn't pan it to this side. You'd probably pan it over here. So that's nice in that respect, but also, if you have a lot of things going on, spacing those out in terms of right and left can really open up your mix a lot more. So experiment with that. Finally, we have the ambience option. And looks like I've messed with this before, so let me just reset this a little bit. Actually, I'll just clear that audio type and then reset that again so you can see at any point in time, if you need to clear the audio type to remove like all the stuff that's happened to it, maybe you were like, oh man, I have screwed this up really bad and I just want to start over, you know, to get an idea of what some different processes will sound like. Just go ahead and select your clips, or you know, you can click dialogue and then clear the audio type. And when you do, it'll remove all the audio effects and it'll reset all the loudness. So let's look at ambience. I have some water here. First thing I'll do is just throw some auto-matching loudness on there, and you can see that's brought up the level of that ambient clip considerably. Is that going to work in this mix? Probably not.
And we're looking for some input from the community.
That's a lot of ambient noise in there. But we'll leave it there for now so we can hear a few of these other effects. Again, we have creative. Now, this is reverb. At this point, you may be thinking creative is just a reverb. It's not really that creative, and I would agree. But the nice thing about reverb is when you're dealing with ambient type sounds, it has the effect of pushing the ambient sounds in the background, right? If something is further away from you, it's going to sound more reverberant. It's not really what's happening, but the more reverberant a sound is, the less clear it is, because what's actually happening is you're hearing direct sound mixed with reflected sound that is time delayed. You hear the direct sound gets to your ear first, and then you hear the reflections of that sound bouncing off different surfaces, and they all get to your ear at a later time. That's what makes reverb. And the effect is that it sounds less clear. So, if you need to kind of virtually push the ambience into the background,
children's book that we've titled Ducks on a Boat.
You can do that with reverb. It's pretty cool. Now I'm going to take that off so you can hear the next effect, and I'll solo up that water. And that is stereo width. This is a nice way to give your audio a wider or a more narrow stereo image. Check it out. If I pull it all the way down to narrow, it actually collapses this stereo recording into a mono track. It's not really a mono track, but it makes both the right and the left channels exactly the same, which is more or less mono. But if we push it the other way, so I'll play it with it off, it gives it this really hyper wide kind of sound, which can be really useful. And finally, we have ducking. So right now, our ambient sound effect is way too loud. So let's apply a little bit more aggressive ducking and generate some keyframes, and it'll pull it down for us. And let's see if this now fits into a mix.
The project is a children's book that we've titled Ducks on a Boat. And we're looking for some input from the community and a little help getting over...
Not bad, actually. I think more 18 decibels might have done a better job.
The finish line as far as publishing costs go.
That's pretty much it. I mean, to just dress this up, I would apply maybe a little bit of a crossfade, or just chuck a couple of keyframes on here to maybe just fade these in and out in a nice subtle way. And that's really pretty much it. You can get this project here in a lot better shape just by tagging your clips as dialogue, music, sound effects, or ambience, doing a little loudness auto matching, and adjusting some of the other parameters there to help things sit in the mix, especially that ducking is very, very useful. It's not everything and it won't solve all your audio issues, but if you're really unfamiliar with how to mix audio, and even if you are familiar, you'd be hard-pressed to do some of these operations in a faster and easier way. So that about does it for this lesson. Now coming up in the next lesson, I'm going to show you how to get a project like this over to Adobe Audition for some hardcore editing work in a really seamless way. So check that out coming up next.
Алексей Краснов выводит команду.
In this lesson, you're going to learn how to use the Essential Sound Panel to help you to mix and balance music against dialogue, sound effects, ambience, and more. So where we left off, we took a look at the Essential Sound Panel for dialogue, but now let's check out what we can do when we select one or more pieces of music in your project. In this case, I just have one, and we label that or tag that as music. Now, I didn't mention in the last lesson, but there are some presets up here, which you can experiment with, and these will do a bunch of different things at once. Again, if you're doing something really quick and dirty and you don't have a lot of time to mess with some things, this can get you pretty close to where you want to be, possibly. It's something to experiment with. But let's just go through the options individually really quick. The first one just like in dialogue, is loudness. Now, loudness is another nice feature to have here, because I think for a lot of folks, they may struggle with balancing dialogue versus music. You know, what sounds right to one person may sound like way overdone in terms of the music. You know, it's got too much music and not enough dialogue, or I can barely hear the music in the background. You know, that sort of thing. This kind of gives you a nice level playing field here. So if I just hit the auto match button, you can see what it's going to do. I'll just reset this here so you can watch it processing in the background. It's really pretty quick. Again, this is analyzing the loudness, not the loudest thing. So it's actually listening to the entire track, or analyzing in computer terms. And it's determining how loud it actually is, not just what the loudest thing in this clip happens to be. And so just by doing a loudness match, and all that I've done to the dialogue so far is applied a loudness auto match to it. Check out how it sounds compared to when we first started.
Hi everyone, my name's Nate Ransom, and I wanted to tell you about a project that my brother-in-law Chris and I have been working on for the past several months. The project is a children's book that we've titled Ducks on a Boat. And we're looking for some input from the community and a little help getting over the finish line as far as publishing goes. So one of the things we really think is exciting about this book and this project.
So already it's really pretty good. However, if we jump to the middle and I play a little bit more, probably in this area here,
how it works and why. Some of the other areas we've discussed are actually things about...
you can see that. It started out sounding really good, and you were thinking, man, I didn't know it could be this easy. Or maybe, woman, I didn't know it could be this easy. Because it sounded like it was going to be really great, but the problem is that this is a particularly troublesome music clip, because it starts kind of quiet and then slowly kind of builds in intensity in a rather subtle way, but you can clearly see that this wave down here is smaller and then it gets fatter up here, right? And that means it's louder, essentially. So this loudness matching auto match dealio here is great, but it isn't everything, and you are going to have to do a little bit of work to be able to manage the level of your music. But this gets it a lot closer to where it needs to be for the final product, and I like that. I really do. The next thing that we have is a duration. Now, if you enable this and then we change the duration, say this clip was longer, like this, and you really wanted this ending bit right here where it kind of fades out in a really nice way, you want that to be kind of where our whole piece ends. So you just try and shorten this up a little bit. Let's see what that's going to do. Yeah, we need it shorter than that. Okay, maybe a little longer. Yeah, something like this. Yeah, let's hear that. Oh, hang on. It's got to render this first. No big deal. We'll just let that render in the background there. What? Hang on. Wait, hang on. Was it... What? That sounds weird.
Pick through the different...
Here's the thing. This duration option here does not do something fancy or clever. It basically does the same thing as getting the rate stretch tool, which I can select by hitting R, and just scooching it in like that.
Funding levels.
Except that it pitch matches it, so it brings the pitch down to where it was before. So it's not a great option. It is an option, but it's not a great option because it's essentially just increasing the speed of the music and then pitch shifting it down, and those two processes do not sound great. Now the great thing is, you can remix music in an incredibly seamless way, something that I would say gets you 90% of the way to what a real pro like myself would do by listening to it and deciding where to make the cuts. You can do that in Audition. And in fact, the Essential Sound panel in Audition, the duration option in there uses their remix algorithm or their remix engine. I don't know exactly what they call it, but that does a rather advanced analyzation of the music and determines where to make edits. That remix feature is absolutely incredible. So the duration, if you're going to plus or minus it just a hair, it's probably okay. If you're going to make larger adjustments like I showed you here, I would just maybe trim it up like this and just do a fade out with a couple of keyframes. Something like that. Okay, finally, we have this ducking option. Let's enable this. The ducking option basically will pull the audio down, which is what ducking means, right? It'll duck it to get it out of the way of something else. And that something else is something that you can determine right up here by enabling one of these buttons. Now, by default, which is what you want, I would say most of the time, the audio will duck against dialogue. That's what's enabled right here. But you can also have it duck against music or sound effects or ambience, or duck against any clips without assigned audio types. So it's pretty cool. And we have some options here to adjust sensitivity, the duck amount, and the fade times. But if we leave them at their defaults and just click generate keyframes, we'll see that it will do something. Now, I don't know exactly how it's going to handle this end fade here that I did, but oh, there we go. It just got rid of it completely. So we'll have to deal with that again, which is no big deal. You can do that in less than 1 second. But now our audio is going to be at a little bit more of an appropriate level here, especially in this middle section here, where you can see that the audio gets a little bit louder. Let's check it out.
And the ways that these ducks could learn lessons about how it works and why. Some of the other areas we've discussed.
Now, I'd say that that's probably really pretty close to how I would mix it. I'd probably bump it up a little bit, but if you were a novice, I'm not sure you could really get it better by fussing with it too much if you didn't know what you were doing. Now, as you saw, it didn't really generate a whole lot of keyframes, and that's because all this dialogue is jammed. It's like really compressed. You know, it's just talk. If there was a space in here, select this music again and generate keyframes, what you'll see is that it will push the audio up here. Drum roll, please. There we go. It does a good job of bringing the level up when there's no dialogue and then bringing it back down when there is dialogue. It works pretty well, I'd say, doing that. Boop, boop. Let's just undo all of that. So there you go. That's what you have in terms of options for music. Well, that's a great place to stop for this lesson. There is a little bit more to explore with the Essential Sound panel in dealing with sound effects and ambience, and you're going to learn all about that coming up in the next lesson. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to round trip your audio from Premiere to Adobe Audition and back to Premiere in a super seamless way. All right, so in the last lesson, you learned about the Essential Sound panel. And I'm going to go ahead and close this because in this lesson, I'm going to show you how to get this whole project over to Adobe Audition to do some much more intensive audio work. Now, I should say not every project needs to go to Adobe Audition to do more hardcore editing work. In fact, I almost never do that. But I know some folks are more comfortable using Adobe Audition for audio at the end of their projects, and that's totally fine. I'm of the mindset that you can get your mixes to sound just as good and do 95% of the things that you would do in Audition in Premiere without having to ever deal with it. The advantage of doing that is that it leaves you flexible to make changes down the road, because when you go to Adobe Audition and you come back, and if you change anything in terms of where your clips are placed in your project, that sort of negates all the work that you did in Adobe Audition, because you're going to have to go back and make tweaks again. So for this process, you really need to be kind of at the end stage of your project. You know, your edit is more or less locked. And if that's the case, let's get this project over to Adobe Audition. If we want to get this whole sequence over to Adobe Audition, we can just come up here to Edit in Adobe Audition. If I had a single clip selected, we'd have the option to send a single clip over, but I'm going to send the entire sequence over. And this is how it's going to work. It's going to come up with a pop-up window here. We can name this. I'm just going to leave it at Ducks on a Boat 2 because that is the sequence that I'm working on. We can set a path for this, and I've already created a folder in this Kickstarter video project folder, and that works for me. We have a bunch of other options here for the selection, whether we want to send the entire sequence or an in and out, how we want to send the video. I would recommend sending it through Dynamically or not sending it. Exporting it through DV Preview Video is kind of an older way to do it. Audio handles, this gives you the option to have a little bit extra on the beginning and end of each audio clip. That can be useful depending on your workflow. And then what to do with the audio clip effects. You want to transfer the settings, and the same for the audio track effects. Do you want to transfer the settings, remove all, or render clips with non-transferable effects? If I had effects on these clips, most likely all of them would transfer over fine. If I had audio track effects, they would also transfer over, unless you're using a third-party effect that you do not have enabled in Adobe Audition. But by and large, everything that you have in your Premiere project will transfer over. In fact, let's just take a look at another project. This is the same project right here. And in this case, I have effects, and some of them are third-party effects. Things like this limiter number 6 here. This is not a stock effect. But if I go to Edit in Audition, I leave all these at their defaults and I click OK. It says this directory already exists. We'll just overwrite it, no problem. Now, unlike the old way to do this, it's not actually going to render and replace all of my audio inside Premiere, which I think is really handy. That always annoyed me because it basically locks you into whatever you had in Premiere, and I don't like that. Everything in Premiere remains untouched unless you need to render things out because you have effects that won't transfer over. So the cool thing about this, and I actually did want to show you this other project, is that all of your settings in Premiere, keyframes, your crossfades, even, check this out, your effects, if you don't have this toggled on here, your track effects, bada boom, de-reverb, de-noise, dynamics processing, even, scroll down here to the bottom, our master bus effects, loudness radar, limiter number 6, multi-band compressor, they're all here. And all of the settings that we had in Premiere are in Audition. That is pretty cool, right? Thank you for that round of applause. You don't have to clap for me. It's fine. You're clapping for Adobe. Like I mentioned before, if you want to do work in Adobe Audition, right? Maybe you want to remix this. Check this out. In the Essential Sound panel, I just labeled this as music or tagged it as music. I'll click on the duration. Instead of the stretch option is the only option, I now have the remix option. Now, again, I told you that it may not work for this clip because this clip does not have a very definitive pulse in terms of its percussion, right? But for most things that have a very definitive pulse, for you non-musicians, that's some kind of music track with some nice drums in it. You know, it doesn't have to be house or techno. It could be any style, but something with a definitive pulse. This remix feature is awesome. It is very, very cool. So we can maybe shorten this down, and what you'll see is it'll put in some edits here, and when you go and play over those edits, did you hear that? It was seamless. Now, to be fair, this part does have some percussion, so full credit, this worked pretty well. I mean, wow. There's no way you could do that faster. So this remix feature is pretty awesome. I don't use Adobe Audition a tremendous amount, if I'm honest, because I can do almost everything in Premiere, including, because I'm a musician, I can mix and chop up my own audio. And I prefer to do it that way so that I get the chorus or I get the intro just where I want, and I can reuse little parts here and there. I can do it in a way that makes sense to me musically. This remix feature is not going to know that this is a more intimate part of the video and you want a softer part of the music there. However, it can do an incredible job of taking a music track and just making it shorter, making it longer. Way better than you could do if you're not a pro musician. That I can guarantee. But you can do all kinds of things in Adobe Premiere. You can analyze your audio, you can fix. If you have a clip like this that's particularly troublesome, you can double click on it, open it up in the Waveform Editor here. You can make adjustments to things like this, selecting various parts of your audio, fixing the level. You can also bring up this thing down at the bottom and look at the spectrogram or spectrograph view, and you can select like some bird chirping sounds or maybe a dog barking in the background or something and get rid of it completely. So you've got these options. You got the waveform editor, you have the multi-track editor, you have a lot more effect slots that you can do. So right now I have 4 effect slots, and in Premiere I believe there's only 5 available. There's only been a handful of times when I've ever needed to use more than 5, but it's really doubtful you're going to use more than 16. If you use more than 16 effects, you need to reevaluate some things about what you're doing. Lots of stuff you can do in Audition. Particularly one of the things that I love about Audition is the way that you can select clips and use this crossfade dealio here. I think this is awesome, the way that it crossfades, and you can adjust the shape and the size, if you will, of this crossfade, and there's other options to make it asymmetrical or to make it linear. I think this is really cool. You can't do this in Premiere, so it's really great. Anyway, when you're done, save your project. Right, I'm going to save this in that location that I set up there. Bada boom, it's saved. Now we need to export this. Now, you could just export a multi-track mixdown, just a stereo file, or you can export to Adobe Premiere Pro. When you do this, you also have some options. Now, before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and label, which you might want to do, all of my audio tracks so that when they get exported, they will have the correct labels, because if you leave them as their default, they're just going to get exported as audio 1, 2, 3, and 4. That may not be very helpful for you down the road. So, once again, I'll just save this really quick. Bada boom, good, done. Export. Export to Adobe Premiere Pro. We have some options down here. We can mix down the entire session, or we can export each track as a stem. I'm going to make sure this open in Adobe Premiere Pro is selected and hit export. It's going to say, actually, these are already there because I've done this previously in take 1, 2, 3, or 4 of this lesson, but I'm just going to click yes. It's going to overwrite those files, no big deal. All right, it's going to do that, and it's going to open up in Premiere Pro. Drum roll, please. That was pretty fast. Now we get this dialog box that says copy Adobe Audition tracks. Where do you want to put them? I'm going to put them in new audio track. Check that out. There they are, right there. All I need to do is mute my originals.
Hi everyone, my name's Nate Ransom, and I wanted to tell you about a project that my brother-in-law Chris and I have been working on for the past several months. The project is a children's book that we've titled Ducks on a Boat.
So just like that, we can get this mixed in Audition. We can pull it back into Adobe Premiere Pro. Now here's the thing. If we need to go back and make adjustments, let's say that we don't like something happening in the mix here, we can remix it a little bit in Premiere, but if we want to go back and do something in Audition, all we need to do is right-click on any one of these files and then just edit original. Now, I know you would think that you might want to edit clip in Audition, but if you choose edit original, it's going to reopen that Adobe Audition file instead of just importing that one clip into Adobe Audition. Then you can make your changes, and you can re-export just like you did before. So we'll just export to Adobe Premiere Pro. I'm going to leave everything exactly the same, except this time I am not going to open in Premiere Pro. I'm just going to click export. It's going to ask me if I want to overwrite the files, and I do, because just imagine that I've made some changes here. And I click yes, and it's going to overwrite those files. And if you watch right down here, see that? They just updated. And so now those files have been overwritten, and you don't have to worry about dealing with more files that have been imported. If I left that checkbox open in Premiere Pro and I didn't overwrite the files, or even if I did, it would still re-import them into the project here, and then I would have a duplicate set of files, audio files with the same names. It becomes confusing. So as long as you deselect that open in Premiere Pro and you overwrite the files, it essentially just overwrites these tracks right here, and it updates in Premiere Pro. Now, the nice thing about exporting stems as opposed to exporting a full mix is that you can leave your master bus effects on, the things that are going to adjust your overall loudness of your entire mix and take care of your limiting and things of that nature. It did bake in all of my track effects when I exported those stems, so all of the track effects, the things that I had like denoise and reverb, all of those effects are applied, which is fine. I don't need to reapply them in Premiere here, so all of that stuff is baked into these tracks now. And the only thing that I really need to do is make sure that I have some limiting and things of that nature on my master bus, and I'm good to go. So it's a really seamless way to get in and out of Adobe Audition. I will say really quick before we wrap this lesson up, you can also import a file in Audition, and instead of just like a wave or something, you can actually just pick your Premiere project and you can open up your sequence in a similar way that we sent this project over to Audition. You can just open the project directly in Audition and do the same process to get it back inside of Premiere. Really simple, really easy, and I hope that you found that useful. All right, coming up in the next lesson, I'm going to show you how to utilize some of the new audio effects that you can find in Premiere Pro. Almost everything that you'll need to do in terms of audio mixing. It's really great, so check that out coming up next. In this lesson, you're going to learn about some of the newer audio effects available in Premiere Pro to make your projects sound great. So if you haven't used the audio track mixer before, that's what I'm going to be showing in this lesson. And to get it, you can come up to the menu here and just go down to Audio Track Mixer and open that up. The Audio Track Mixer is not what you see in kind of the standard editing layout. If I reset this to the saved layout, by default, it shows you the Audio Clip Mixer. I don't find that very useful. I can very quickly, in any one of these clips here, just control click on the track volume or the track gain here, and that will give me a little keyframe, and I can move it up and down, and I can basically mix it like this. It's a quick way to do it. I've been doing it for years, and I think it works pretty well. And so for most of the dialogue stuff, what I do is I will get it all lined up and do my edit. And then when it comes time to really refine the audio, I'll select all of my audio for the dialogue, and then I'll bring up the essential sound panel. I'll mark it all as dialogue, and you'll see it is already marked as dialogue. And then I'll auto-match the loudness, and then I'll close the essential sound panel, because that's basically all I use it for. For all of the rest of the audio treatment, I do that in the track mixer. I created a workspace here that has only the things that I like and I use, and gets rid of the stuff that I don't use very frequently. But if you want to bring up that audio track mixer, you just come up here to Window and then Audio Track Mixer. So in the Audio Track Mixer, I usually will keep all of my talk tracks in the first 2 or 3 or 4 slots, or all the dialogue tracks, if you will. And then I load those tracks up here in the Audio Track Mixer with some effects. These are not audio plugins that were released in the last edition. They're actually a few years old. But since my original intro to video editing in Premiere Pro, these are some new and updated effects. So let's start with the EQ. This is something that I use a ton on dialogue, sometimes on music. Although usually music is pretty well produced and it doesn't need corrective EQ, although sometimes you will need to throw an EQ on to carve out some frequencies for speech intelligibility. But we're just going to be taking a look at basic kind of dialogue stuff in this lesson. This is a really nice updated EQ. I really like that we have a high-pass filter with a variable slope. So what this means is we set the high-pass frequency, and it's only going to pass frequencies above this point, and below this point it's going to reduce the amplitude or intensity, if you will, of those frequencies by differing amounts. So if we set this to 6 decibels per octave, you can see that's a very smooth roll-off. And so you can very carefully roll off in various amounts the low energy off dialogue tracks. This is something that I always do with dialogue tracks because none of this information below like 50, 60, 70 hertz is really useful, but it can sneak into mixes and cause some weird rumbling and obscure other tracks with low energy. So I just get rid of it. And then I just use the rest of these nodes, and there are quite a few of them. There is a low shelf and a high shelf, and then there are 5 fully parametric bands of equalization. Now, just like you saw in some of the previous lessons, the denoise effect, which is very good, is available in this audio track mixer, along with a de-reverb effect, which is also very good. I normally don't use denoise and de-reverb on every single track. Usually I will apply some denoise on a dialogue track because there's usually just a little bit of noise depending on how much it bothers you or how audible it is. The stock denoise effect is excellent. Even if you jack up the amount like all the way to 100%, it's still pretty great sounding, although I don't recommend that unless you have seriously noisy audio. But these are both excellent effects, and I use them all of the time. Another effect that I think is fantastic is this dynamics processing effect right here. And by the way, you can load these effects by just clicking into any of these empty slots here, and then they're all categorized. So amplitude and compression are dynamic type effects. These are things that affect the amplitude of your signal. But you can find the rest of the audio effects all categorized here as well. This dynamics processing effect is really nice. This is basically a compressor and an expander all in one. And the thing that I like about it is that it has a really nice visual to it where you can see the audio coming in and see exactly how you might want to set this up based on the audio coming into this input-output graph here. So this is really nice. It's got a spline curve, which without this is a little bit harsher sounding, I think, so I usually will enable this spline curve, which gives a softer curve to this compression slope here. It also has a nice settings section where you can adjust the look-ahead time, the level detection, the gain processing, and the band limiting here as well. It's a really great effect. On the master bus, I'll show you the 3 effects that I use all of the time. One of those is the multiband compressor. This is a newer effect. Premiere has had a multiband compressor for a while. They used to license one, I believe, from Isotope, and now they have their own, which looks very, very similar. This is a kind of multi-stage dynamics processor. So a multiband compressor splits the signal into at least 4 bands, although you can disable these and have it work on less than 4 bands. And then you can compress them individually. I use this on the master bus to basically smooth out all of the frequencies. And it's set very, very conservatively with a ratio of 1.5 to 1. So that's not very much compression at all. This effect also has a limiting section right here. It's got a limiter, and then there's a brick wall limiter down here, which you can enable. I haven't found these to be incredibly effective, so I usually do not enable the limiter section here, and I don't check on this brick wall limiter. And the reason is because I use this third-party limiter here. This is called limiter number 6, which, by the way, is free, and it's awesome. I use this in my master bus to do a few things. It does a very gentle amount of compression, although you can set this up however you want. I use it for very gentle compression. It has a multi-band peak limiter, although you can set it to single band or mid-side. It's got a ton of options, but I use it as a multi-band peak limiter, and I don't use the high frequency limiter or the clipper, but I do use this last section. This has a final, what's labeled as a protection limiting stage at the very end. And one of the modes, you can set it to digital clip, intersample peak fast, and intersample peak precise. This measures the peaks in between the audio samples of a digital audio system. So the peaks that you see here in the master bus, these are sort of lying to you because these do not read intersample peaks, and sometimes intersample peaks can actually be 3 decibels higher than what your standard sample peak limiter is showing you. That can be problematic because to meet certain audio standards, you need to have intersample peak basically capped at a certain level. Sometimes it's -1.5, sometimes it's -2. -2 will pretty much cover you for, I think, most all standards out there. The limiter that is built into this multi-band compressor, both this limiter right here and the brick wall limiter, I have been able to pass peaks above where I have set these thresholds, and that's no good. So I always use this limiter number 6 for some very gentle compression and peak limiting, and to make sure that my absolute true peaks are not higher than -2 or sometimes -1.5. It's a fantastic effect. Now, to use third-party effects in Premiere, you could come right over here to the audio track mixer, and there's a little 3-line, what I call a hamburger menu. And if you click that, you can come down here to Audio Plugin Manager. There's also an audio plugin manager for Audition. And then when you download effects from the internet, free effects or commercial effects that you pay for, you put those all in a folder. They have to be 64-bit plugins, which is pretty standard these days. And then you can point this audio plugin manager to that folder by adding it here, and you add the directory and it will scan those, and then you can enable or disable any of the effects that you want to show up in Premiere. You can see I have quite a few, but I only really use a handful of the VST effects that could work in Premiere. I don't use all of them. I only need a handful. Between the third-party effects and the fantastic stock effects that you get, especially this denoise and de-reverb, you can get a ton of audio work done right inside of Premiere. Now, like I mentioned before, there are some limitations. And the main limitation is that at this point in time, you can't save an effects chain in the audio track mixer, meaning I can't save these 4 effects in the configuration that I have them. So you have to load them individually every time, which is fine because you don't necessarily need all of these for every dialogue track. The other limitation is once you get a setting that you like in one of these effects, maybe it's this multi-band compressor, I have to set this up every time because there is no way currently to store an audio track preset. You can save presets when you apply them to clips as an audio effect, if I were to drop that on a clip, but you can't do that to the master bus, and you can't apply effect presets to any of these. They just have these stock presets, which I don't think are very good. So usually what I'll do is I'll just pick a preset that closely matches what I want to do and then just adjust a few of the parameters. Usually that is, let's just set it back to default. The classical master is a good place to start, and then usually what I'll do is just change the attack times here to 5 instead of 10 because that's too slow, and then just disable the limiter, and that's pretty much it. So it really only takes a few seconds to do, but it is a feature that they should have, and it is a user-requested feature, but it's not available yet. Now, the one workaround to this is you can create a project with a blank sequence with no footage, load up the audio track mixer, create all of the kind of audio layouts that you want with your dialogue tracks here with all the effects configured exactly how you like them, and then just save that project. And then when you start a new project, you load that project as kind of a project template. You can also have all of your folders in there as well for organization, which is a time saver. So that is a workaround. It's not a great workaround, but if there was something that I would complain or caution you against using this method for, that would be it. However, I don't find that a huge limitation. It's really not a big deal. So that about does it for this lesson. Make sure to check out the next lesson, where you're going to learn about the essential graphics panel in Premiere. In this lesson, you are going to learn how to create some basic but really nice looking titles right inside Premiere using the essential graphics panel. The Essential Graphics panel was added to Premiere a few years ago, and since then, it has had some updates which really make the functionality quite nice. And you can do a lot of things, from very simple titling and texts and graphic elements to things that are really pretty complex without ever having to go to After Effects. Now, the cool thing about the Essential Graphics panel is it does have a link with After Effects, so you can build some really complex looking graphics and lower thirds and titles in After Effects and sort of templatize them so that they work with the Essential Graphics panel. And I'm going to show you that in an upcoming lesson. But for now, let's look at how to get the graphics panel out here so you can start working with it. If you come up here to the menu and go to Window, you can find the Essential Graphics panel right down here. There's also a dedicated graphics workspace, which you can find right here. And that should pull out the Essential Graphics panel as well. I'm just going to switch back to my Bodhi workspace because it's a little less cluttered. Now, the Essential Graphics panel has two tabs on it. There's a Browse tab here, and this is where you can store and search all of the templates that you want to use for titles and other kind of graphic treatments that you might have. Some of these you can create and make inside of Premiere, and a lot of the ones that you're seeing here actually came from Encoder elements, and those have been designed in After Effects, and a lot of them are quite a bit more complex than what you could do easily in the Essential Graphics panel by itself. But this is a really nice way to get some really, really high-end looks very, very simply. And I'm going to show you more about these sort of templates and how you can use them in an upcoming lesson. But for right now, let's look at how to get some basic titles into our project. I want to do a really simple lower third for my skater man here. So I'm just going to grab the Type tool here. The keyboard shortcut is T. And if I click in the program window, I'll make a little title here, Johnny Smith. If I hit Escape and then V, I can switch back to the Selection tool. Unlike After Effects, you can't use the Enter key on the numeric keypad to kind of enter in your text. But you can just switch back to the Selection tool. And then you can grab your text and position it here visually. You can scale it up and down however you want. And if you look over here in the Edit tab, you can see we have a ton of options for modifying this text. We have a whole Align and Transform set of tools here where we can align this to various parts of the frame or the horizontal and vertical centers. You can also see that as I move the text around the program monitor, it's snapping. Now, you may not have snapping enabled, but to enable it, you can just click on the wrench icon here, and then you can enable and disable Snap in Program Monitor. Without snapping enabled, you'll see as I move it around, it's not going to snap anywhere. However, if you hold down Control, you can temporarily enable snapping, which I think is perhaps a little bit more useful so you don't have it snapping to things all of the time. That's how I prefer to use it. So over here, these are your basic kind of transform controls. We get scale, rotation, anchor point, position, opacity here. In the next section down here, we can store and recall what Adobe calls master text styles. And that's basically a style that includes your font style, and all this other jazz you can find below here. So if you create a look for your text that you like and you want to reuse it and be able to recall it very quickly, you can create a master text style and then name that and recall that anytime you like. So we have a full drop down here of all of the fonts that you have on your system. Those are all available. You can adjust the tracking, the leading, the line spacing, the whole thing. Down here under the Appearance section, you have a bunch of options to adjust the fill color. Maybe you want this a light blue. We can drop a stroke on this. We can adjust the stroke width. You can also enable multiple strokes to create some more interesting or unique sort of styling for your texts here. And if you click on the wrench icon, we have stroke styles that we can use. So we can change the line join from miter to round. You can also change the cap type, although for this text, it's not going to make any difference, but you can see as I change that to round join, now it's got kind of more round and puffy sort of look to it, which is kind of nice. I actually prefer the miter join, I think, but I'll get rid of those to show you the next option, which is background. This is a really cool option that creates a bounding box or a background box here that is linked to your text layer. And you have control over the color, the opacity, and the padding, which is really cool. So you no longer have to use another element like you did in the past in the Essential Graphics panel to create a linked kind of background box for your text. And this will auto-update or act in a responsive way, so maybe we want to add a second line here. Pro Skater. And you can see that the background box there updated exactly like it should have. And if we adjust maybe the font size here, and the style, and the line spacing or leading here, you can see that it acts exactly like you would expect. It's really cool and really, really fast. It creates some nice looking titles here with a cool little background. You can change the color here. Maybe we want this to be orange, blue and orange. Whoa, okay, that was a terrible idea. Who thought of that? Maybe a dark orange. Maybe we'll just set this back to black. Yeah, that works pretty well. Finally, you can throw a shadow on and you have a bunch of controls over the shadow here. I'll let you explore that. And you can mask things with your text layer, which is pretty cool. So you can pull in graphics and video. So for example, I have a piece of footage here that I got from Encoder Elements, and I can just drop this in underneath my text here. And if I select my text and I choose mask with text, now it's going to essentially make the text a track matte, or it's going to mask this layer here with the text. Now it doesn't work perfectly with this layer. I don't think this is a great example, but I just wanted to show it to you so you can get an idea of what it can do. So you can create all kinds of nice, maybe big bold text. If we changed our text here to something, maybe just a single line, I'll select that text again. Just double click here. And I'll just make this a single line. I'll hit escape and just make some adjustments over here. Maybe I'll center this up, put it in the middle, make the text quite big. Something like this. Maybe I'll recenter that in the middle there. You can see you can create some really nice looking effects. We can have this kind of blow right up to reveal the background layer and use that as maybe a transitional element. And a lot of these properties here, if not all of them, can actually be animated as well. Now, I'm not going to show you that in this lesson because it's going to be too much to cram in, but you can create some really nice looking animated text treatments or graphic treatments right inside Premiere Pro without ever having to jump over to After Effects, which is really neat. Finally, I want to show you, you can add effects to any of these layers. Now, I don't know if all of the effects work, but a great many of them do. And for something like this, I might want to maybe adjust this video layer here by throwing a curves on it. Now, this is still listed as an obsolete effect, but it'll work just fine. And that should help this to look a little bit nicer. You pull some of the greens out of it to give it some more contrast. Push up some of the reds here. I know, something like that. Pretty cool. In addition, you can create some basic shapes in here. You can add a rectangle, and we can actually use this as a background box for the text if you wanted to. So let me just get this right here, and I'll recenter up this anchor point, maybe kind of center it here, pull it down to the bottom. It's not quite centered on the text, but that's kind of in the neighborhood. If you hold down Shift and Alt, you can use the arrow keys here to position things a little bit more easily. So I'm going to take my shape layer here, and it looks like it's actually being masked by the text because we can't see it. So I'm going to take all of these layers here, I'm going to put them in their own group. And I can rename this text, and that works fine. And now I can change my fill color here, maybe do like a white or something, and you can see now, yeah, I'm going to have to reposition that just a little bit here. But the cool thing about these shapes is I can actually pin this to my text layer here. So I just selected that from the drop-down, and I can select which sides I want to pin it to. But now if I go and change my text, so I'll select my text here, Mark Cole, check that out. My background box changed with the text, and it'll also follow it along if I want to animate it or move it around. Really, really cool. And you can also load graphics here from a file as well. You can even grab the pen tool and start drawing a maybe more abstract shape here. And you have a bunch of controls over that as well. We can pull that down in the layer stack, change the color of this. I don't think that was a great shape for a demo, but I think you get the idea here. And you can maybe make this a stroke only. Make this a really bright red. Perfect. Look at that. Excellent. Now you can see that with any of the shape layers, you can also make those a mask as well. So maybe you want to take, let's get rid of this guy here, and we'll call this rectangle. Maybe you want to duplicate your bubbles footage, pull it down here, and then set your rectangle to mask that. And maybe throw an RGB curves on that, and then push this up. So you get kind of this sort of effect here. You can see I'm just kind of messing around here, but you can do a lot of really nice things in this Essential Graphics panel over here and make some really great looking text treatments. So that about wraps it up for this lesson. Coming up in the next lesson, I'm going to show you how to make some nice animated lower thirds right inside the Essential Graphics panel. So check that out coming up next. In this lesson, you're going to learn how to do some basic motion graphic title animations right inside Premiere. So I have my basic skater sequence loaded up here, and I want to do a nice little lower third treatment here. So I'm going to grab the type tool, and I'm going to click to add some text. Now when I do, you can see it's already added a background. And when I start typing, it has the font that I want to use already selected. And that's because the Essential Graphics panel will use whatever settings you have used last, which is pretty convenient when you are making multiple titles, so that you don't have to change the style and the font and the background in your stroke every single time. So that's why I have the background already selected here with 100% opacity and 35 units of padding. I don't know if that's pixels or percents. I don't really know what's going on with that, but there are 35.3 units of padding around. A lot of the work is already done, so that's quite nice. I might make a few tweaks here to the styling. There we go, something like that. Now, at this point, I just want to throw out a little bit of caution when you are making graphics and you're trying to animate them inside of Premiere. My advice is to keep it really simple. Although you can do a lot of complex things, meaning there is the ability to add many, many layers over here and stack all kinds of effects, I wouldn't recommend it. Because the more complex that you make your essential graphic, at least built inside of Premiere, I would say the more likely it is that Premiere will crash or there will be some kind of problem in the render or even inside your project. In fact, I was recording this very lesson 2 days ago, and I was building just a really basic title animation here, very similar to this, but I was not using this background. Instead, I was using these rectangles here that you can load up, and I had these pinned to the text layer, and I had maybe 3 of them. One of them was working as a mask, one of them was kind of a skinny bar along the side. and I was animating their position and scale. That's it. Super basic. Well, somehow I had managed to corrupt my essential graphic inside of Premiere, and it made my entire program window turn black for the entire project, and it would not come back unless I switched the renderer underneath Project Settings General to Software Only, which is not a great solution because that is extremely slow. I was on with support for over 2 hours trying to figure out what the problem was with Premiere. I ended up installing an older version of Premiere, an older version of After Effects, only to find out that right inside Premiere, it had somehow created a corrupted essential graphic. So, although you can create some cool looking animations inside Premiere, your mileage may vary, and I would recommend keeping it really simple, especially if you want your text to remain somewhat responsive, meaning that if we add more text to this, your background will kind of scale along with that there. With that said, let's try and animate this a little bit right inside of Premiere here. So over in the effect controls, I'm going to start with a really simple sort of position animation. And I'll come out, let's see, I'll hold shift and then hit the right arrow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. That'll put me out about 40 frames, and then I'll go back about 1 second, which is 30 frames. And every time you hold shift and then press either right or left arrow, it moves the CTI, or the playhead here, 5 frames. So that is back 30 frames. And I'm just going to push this off the screen here, maybe hold shift, there we go. So it's completely off the screen. Now just to give me a little bit more wiggle room, you might want to push it over even farther. You can see the bounding box there, in case you make a bigger title. So you may want to just move it over like that. And I'll select my keyframes here and choose Bezier. And then, actually, you know what? I won't do that. Instead, I'll make this one ease in, and this one ease out. For me, this is just an easier way to get the handles kind of closer to where they need to be, because as you can see, positioning these is not very easy. What I want to do is drag this line straight out, and there's no way to kind of constrain this handle to do that because it wants to move up and down just a little bit. But if you start with ease out on the first keyframe and ease in on the second one, it gets it pretty close. This is the curve that I want to make here. By twirling down the position, you can adjust the velocity of these keyframes here such that it kind of just flies out. So let's check it out right here. Just kind of like that. It doesn't look great right now, but I'm going to add something else to this, and I think it'll look pretty nice. So the next thing I'm going to add is a rectangle, and what I want to do is I want to make kind of a rectangle that starts over here, and I want it to scale up in this direction and then basically fly off. And the effect is it's going to look like a rectangle grows from over here and reveals the text. So I'm just going to make the rectangle kind of cover up my text here, and then right at this point here, which is 10 frames out, so yeah, that's 10 frames, I am going to find my shape, and I'm going to unlink the uniform scale here because I only want to adjust the horizontal scale. And so right here, I want it to be at 100% scale. And again, I moved the anchor point. If you didn't catch that before, this is the anchor point. And I moved that and snapped it by holding down Control right here on the edge so that it scales from this point here. And then I'll go back to the beginning and set the scale to 0. And I'll go back to this same point here. By the way, I'm getting the CTI to snap to these keyframes by holding Shift. So right at 10 frames out, I'm going to pop a position keyframe, and I'm going to move, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 30 frames. 6 times 5 is 30. Yep. Okay, my math works out. I'm going to hold Shift and just push this rectangle right off the screen. So this is basically what I have right now. like that. It really helps if you make sound effects when you're doing these graphics. It's just that's something I learned a long time ago. Now the keyframes on that don't look very good, so I'm going to select these two and choose ease in, and select the beginning two and choose ease out. That's going to make it look a little better, but I still want to make a few adjustments to that. So I'm going to twirl down position. I'm going to drag this handle back and pull this handle out. I'm trying to keep this line nice and smooth there. And the same thing for scale. Let's see. So I'll drag that handle to the left and that handle to the left. There we go. Maybe pull that one out just a hair. That looks pretty decent. Maybe I could make this a nice bright color. That might look okay. Oh, let's try that again. There we go. That looks okay. Pretty cool. Now I probably want to make this just a hair longer.